So does anybody have anything insightful that they'd like to talk about before we go ahead and get live?
We could, I don't know, I think a good way to start things off, really with any of these would just be kind of any gaming updates within the last week. What have we been doing? What have we seen? And
Hmm.
there was that summer game fest just yesterday?
Yeah.
I was watching the trailers for that.
Yeah. There
Oh,
was
we did see the trailer for Battlefield 2042. That looks pretty cool.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
There was a
that.
couple of announcements for some pretty dope ass games. I think there was something that was announced earlier today. I think. Here, let me scroll my Facebooks. Go ahead, talk boys, while I try and figure out what
I
it
was gonna
was
say,
that
like, I
was.
was, I was like looking over things. I'm like, I wonder if anything was shown about Pokemon. So I go on Cerebi and look at. I'm like, oh, cool, more cards that require 4 cards to form one big card. Jesus Christmas.
Okay.
Ugh.
Yeah, I didn't see any Nintendo stuff at the Summer Games
Mm,
Fest.
No, I think their stuff is gonna be on Tuesday.
Yeah, well, Summer Games Fest was separate from E3. For some reason, I thought it was happening in July. I didn't really look into it too much. I kind of snoozed on it, but and then I
Mhm.
all of a sudden, here are all these trailers flooding in. So I watched through them. Most of them, it seemed like it was a lot of indie games. The big reveal was definitely that gameplay for Elden Ring.
Oh, I
Oh, they
found
actually show gameplay for it.
I found the announcement that made me go, "Ooh, I'm interested." So there's going to be a Lord of the Rings anime movie that's going
Oh,
to be coming out. It's
oh
going to be
God.
called
Okay.
the
You know
War
there
of the.
was one like 30 years ago, right? 40 years ago.
Yes, I know, but Russell, this is like a slightly different story. It's expand. Apparently, it's expanding on the story of Helm's Deep, which is a pretty dope ass
Battle.
battle and pretty, you know, iconic scene from the
It's called
trilogy.
The
So.
Lord of the Rings, the dope ass battle of Helm's Keep.
No, it's gonna be called the War of the Rohirrim. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes.
Nice.
And I like my anime. I know you like your anime too, there, Mark.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't. I don't know if I did. I know that you were an anime fan.
Um, I mean, I think we've talked here and there about anime that we watched, but maybe
Joe's
not.
in it for the memes. He's a JoJo fan.
Hey, look, stop. Have you
Yeah,
watched
it's
JoJo, Mark?
no, I haven't seen any of it. No.
Uh, it's one of those where you just got to turn your brain off.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
you have no choice because they literally it's like exposition the anime. They just say everything that's completely obvious.
Okay.
Yeah. Once
I
you get
mean,
a
just the main thing I know is that like one, at least in the sub, that like all the like the adversaries are named after like different bands or different artists,
Mhm.
and every credits is like roundabout by yes.
Well, for the
So
first two seasons at least.
is it only the first 2 seasons that it does that?
Yeah. Or well, the first two parts. I think the first part is like 5 or 7 episodes. It's really not that long.
So it's
Um,
only like maybe 10 episodes or so that they use roundabout.
no, because the entirety of part two, which is
Hmm.
I guess the second 2/3 of season one.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one is like I want to say maybe like 6 to 8 episodes, and then part two is more more hefty. It's like 12 to 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know this series has been going on for decades. Did you start with the newer ones, or did you go back to the beginning?
So what it was is I had seen a lot of the memes for JoJo's, and my biggest influence to watch it was PewDiePie because he would joke about JoJo's and shit like that. So then I was like, oh, you know what, I'll check it out, and
Yeah,
I
get in on the joke.
yeah, I saw
Essentially
that.
where the to be continued meme came from.
Yeah. And so the first full season was on Netflix a couple years ago, and I was like, all right, I'll check this out. And at first I was like, Jesus Christ, this is horrible. Like, what the hell? But like, I kind of got sucked in after it got really good.
I hear good things about it.
And then um I saw that Netflix didn't have season 2 or part 3 on yet,
Mhm.
so I was just like, you know what? I really want to watch this anime. So I found like a website that just had all of the episodes uploaded to it. So I watched all of season 3 or part 3 and then all of part 4 in English dubbed, and then I couldn't find an English dub of part 5 anywhere, so I just bit the bullet and subscribed to Crunchyroll to watch part 5, and
Mhm. All
it
over the place.
yeah, and it was fantastic, dude.
Oh,
Highly
I'm glad.
recommend it.
Yeah,
Y-
maybe one to check out at some point. The last anime that I watched I watched the first season of Mob Psycho 100.
mm-hmm.
Have you heard about this one?
No, I haven't. What's that about?
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, basically like it's kind of slice of lifey the way that it plays out, but there's also this supernatural vibe to it too, where there are these spirits in the
Mm-hmm.
world and people with supernatural gifts. So eventually, the season kind of boiled down to a bunch of humans with supernatural powers, and they were all fighting it out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the main character, it's kind of funny. It's by the same studio that made One Punch Man,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay.
yeah, and it definitely looks like it. So it has a sense of humor to it, and yeah, it's definitely interesting. Yeah, you have this main character who like has this mentor who is kind of a con man and doesn't have powers himself, but has convinced this guy, the kid, that he does have powers. So the hero, he thinks that his mentor is like super strong, when in reality the main character is all actually really strong, but his mentor tells him not to use his powers on people. So like, even though he's like super strong, he's not gonna just like beat people up
Mm-hmm.
for no good reason. So
Interesting. And
it's
what'd you say it was called?
Mob Psycho 100.
Mob Psycho 100. Okay, where can I watch that?
We've been watching it on just this shady website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know where you can watch it officially,
All
but
right.
that's interesting. Yeah,
I'll
before that
search for it on Crunchyroll, see if it's there.
yeah, it probably will be there. It's a newer one. I think it's somewhat well known in
Mm-hmm.
the community probably. But yeah, before that we watched Rurouni Kenshin, which was on my bucket
Oh,
list.
that's an absolute classic. I love that one. I haven't
Yeah, we
seen it in a
skipped the
really
filler, so
yeah,
yeah.
I haven't seen it in a really long time, but I just remember absolutely adoring that show.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved watching that on Toonami back in the day, being in like middle school or high school watching that show. And I feel like I must have just seen this first like 7 episodes on repeat
Yeah,
because when I actually sat down and we started watching it together, um,
and it
you
gets
know,
dark, dude.
yeah, it does. And there's so much stuff I didn't see, all these different characters that Kenshin fights that I never saw when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I just got like the basic stuff, but yeah, it was fun. I'm glad I finally watched that. Apparently, the last 30 episodes or so are filler. It's just a filler
Oh
arc. So
yeah, yeah. After he
we
beats
did
the final boss, it's just
yeah.
like
There's like a very clear main villain. So we stopped watching after that, and that felt like a good closing point for
yeah.
me. And then we watched the OVA,
Mm.
which is the prequel to it with
Oh
Samurai
yeah,
X.
Samurai X. Oh, that's that.
That's really good.
I watched
Even if you
that
yeah.
after I had watched Rurouni Kenshin, and I watched it on YouTube. Someone had like cut it up and put it on like the sub on YouTube before,
Nice.
this was way before like the algorithm and the all
Mhm.
that stuff really
You get
was
away with
like,
that kind of thing
yeah, you could get away with it. So I watched
without
it.
having to know rights and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I watched it in an afternoon and I loved it.
Yeah, it's a great show. I'm glad I finally
Mhm.
watched it all. And the OVA was yeah fantastic. Even if you haven't watched the show, you would probably enjoy the OVA. It's
Mhm.
all encompassing. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of YouTube, we're live. Ha! Beat you to it, Joe.
Oh yes, we're live, gentlemen. Yeah. Also, before we
We've been live
actually,
for almost 6 minutes now.
yeah, actually, by my record, it's 9, but who's
9 minutes.
counting?
Yes, I saw
Um,
it. YouTube's
so,
counting.
before we move on to the rest of the stuff. I've actually been recently been watching Neon Genesis Evangelion or Evangelion or
Okay.
however it's.
Evangelion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we watched the first few episodes of that, and for one reason, maybe it was slow or something, or maybe
Hmm.
it was the voice acting and the dub. Something was off about it. We didn't get sucked in, but I always hear good things about it. That it's a classic. I know I need to get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, it. I watched the first couple episodes and didn't get hooked, but I was just like, keep hearing really good things about this show. Like, it's
Hmm.
Well, that's
online
the
if
thing.
you
I
search. Online if you search, it's like always within the top 10 of best anime of all time, and I'm like, all right.
I had always heard it was like almost up on the level by some people's estimation with like Cowboy Bebop, which I know is sacrilegious to say with Mark in the chat. But
Yeah, it's no, I that, yeah, it's definitely one people talk about a lot. It's actually kind of funny because I thought my Saturday was all set this weekend because I actually after work today I just picked up the new Ratchet and Clank game.
Nice.
oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I was planning on playing that tomorrow, but then our friend Evan hits me up saying he has nothing to do. He asked me, "Hey, you have the Cowboy Bebop DVDs. You want to marathon that tomorrow and just go to the bar and shit?" So I was like,
Perfect.
"Fuck yeah, man!" So that's the new plan because he's never seen it and he's a big anime fan too.
Mm, yeah. So
So that'll be exciting for him to see it.
yeah, I mean, Cowboy Bebop is also another one of those classics that's really good. I've only seen
Yeah, it's my number one.
a few episodes here and there, so it's definitely on my radar as far as animes to watch. But yeah, and as far as Evangelion goes, I think I'm about like 10 or 12 episodes into it, and I'm really sucked in. It
Okay,
it
I should give it another try.
yeah, you definitely should. I I I think you might like it.
Okay, yeah, and definitely go for Cowboy Bebop. It's only 26 episodes,
Oh, okay.
and there's one movie. I have all of it on DVD, so if you ever want to watch it, feel free to borrow it.
All right, fair enough, man. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on another episode of Dialogue Options. Joining me to the left and right of me are my lovely co-hosts Marcamune and Ace X-Wing 88, also known as Mark and Russ, and I am your lovely host, Cobalt Cat, or as these two lovingly call me, Joe, because that's my name.
I thought you were gonna say Pat Sajak, but it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know why we call you Joe. Cobalt Cat's what's on your birth certificate, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
it is actually. Every time I go to apply for a job, they're like, "Oh, we got a furry coming over here looking for a job."
Oh God.
Nani?
Hired.
Well, we went right off the rails. It didn't take long.
You're
And we're how many minutes in? 13 minutes in.
you're a furry. You're hired.
Oh, what the heck are you applying to? Jesus.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Well,
so
do you want to introduce the topic
Well,
for today,
ladies and
Joe?
gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Cobalt Cat, and this was Dialogue Options number 4. No.
Wait, roll the end credits music.
Boom, doo doo boo doo doo. All right, so yeah, our topic for today, we will be touching on a few topics tonight. We will be starting with games we would like to play, games we played but did not like, games we would like to recommend to each other, and then we will be having a full spoiler-filled discussion about the newly released Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil 8 Village, Resident Evil Village 8, whatever you want to call it.
Resident
eight,
Evil V
eight
I
evil
I
resident,
I age.
eight evil resident villages.
There you go. Yes, so that's what is on the chopping block for today.
Yes,
Yeah,
big
so
discussion about the Hateful Eight.
Mm-hmm.
okay, so first,
So,
let's go ahead and talk about some games that we haven't played yet that we might like to sample in the future. Let's start with you, Mark.
Yeah, sure. Oh man, this is. I mean, I could spend hours just going through the wish list of games that I have right now saved on my phone with this one. So when I was thinking about this conversation, I approached it in a way where I was thinking more so series, because there are so many just one-off games out there that I want to play. But this for me, there are entire series of games that I want to dive into, and and
Hmm.
these are series that I haven't even played one of yet. So that's what I'll be kind of starting out with. And I would say, okay, the first one, I'm gonna go ahead and say East. Have you heard of the East series, guys?
Mm, not even close. What is it?
Like East as an EAS or East as an
No,
EAST?
no, it's spelled YS. So a lot
Oh.
of people would be forgiven for pronouncing it Wise as the title of the game series, but
Yus.
it's East.
East.
So what is it?
Yeah, it's a JRPG series, and it's actually been going on for decades. And they're action RPGs, but it
Oh, I
seems
see it.
like I keep hearing about this all the time when I go on YouTube because, yeah, as you guys know, I like collecting video games, and on YouTube I follow a bunch of people who also have who collect games, and some of these guys have really massive games collections, and it seems like all of them end up talking about this series at some point, and it's not mainstream. You don't really hear people talking about it. I haven't played one, but it looks really interesting to me. I love RPGs, grew up on JRPGs, and uh, I'd like to give it a try and see what all the hype is about. But I guess 'cause it's kind of it's so niche and you don't see it everywhere.
Hmm.
Uh, if you want to buy these games, most of them are really expensive. So that's another thing that's holding me back.
Well, it's funny, just taking a look at the timeline of it, like it looks like this series has been around since like 1987, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's really old. Yeah, it's back there in time with like the origin of the first Final Fantasy.
Uh,
That's how old the series is.
Wow.
oh, that's pretty cool. Okay. I
Yeah,
mean, as far as the JRPG thing goes, I mean, I know myself personally, my main experience comes down to like Pokemon with it, which is, I don't know, I hesitate to call that a true JRPG, but it's pretty darn close.
I
It's
Um,
call
like
it an RPG for
JRPG
sure.
light.
It's
essentially.
it's a good I think it's a good intro to RPGs. It's easy to wrap your head around for someone who's just getting into it, you know.
Hmm.
And if that's the case, I've been just getting into it for 20 years now.
Well, there's definitely, as you know, Russ, there's a lot of room to go crazy, go wild, and in depth with
Oh,
that game.
absolutely.
But it that's the nice thing about Pokemon, though. Yeah, it appeals to both levels of skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at it right here, it's just at least some of the newer ones are definitely they're still making games. I think the most recent one was like 2019 or something like that. So,
Yeah, I think they recently came out with one this year, East 9, Monstrum Nox. I
yep,
think that came out recently.
yeah, I'm
So,
actually,
yeah, a
yep,
lot of these
I'm looking at it
games.
right here. So, yeah, that's pretty cool though. I mean, at least the series is still going, which is always a plus. And I know you like your JRPG, so that could definitely keep you busy for a while.
Yeah, and it's impressive that this game has flown so far under the radar that we've never heard of it up until now.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, like if you want some good recommendations for some of the YouTubers that I follow, some guys who collect games, uh, the main one, the big collector out there is Metal Jesus Rocks. I follow
Great name.
him, and
Metal Jesus rocks. Nice.
yeah, Metal Jesus. Yeah, he's a metalhead who loves collecting games. He has thousands and thousands of games. He just covers a wide range of things. He's great. He does a lot of good videos. Radical Reggie, who's also friends with Metal Jesus in the same kind of group there. So he's a collector, makes a lot of good videos. Uh, Happy Console Gamer and GameSack. All four of those channels have talked about East, and they all love it. So I want to see what it's about.
Right on.
Definitely.
So before I get to my next one, maybe you just want to go around and we each get
Yeah, we
one
could do
before
that.
we circle back.
Yeah, sure. Why not? All right,
Okay.
Russ, your turn.
So one of the ones that's kind of on my docket that I've wanted to play for a few years has been the Civilization series.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
I've never gotten involved with it only because of the fact that one, I was always busy playing something else. I mean, obviously it's an RTS and a strategy game. Um and I've never heard anything but good things about the series itself.
I'm kind of
But
surprised you haven't played those games. Yeah.
I kind of am too. I think what happened is that like prior to falling down the Total War rabbit hole about 13 years ago, I kind of had plans of getting involved in this after playing Age of Empires for so long, because it seemed like a natural step from Age of Empires, because that's also an RTS strategy game. And to my understanding, the way Civilization typically runs is that like you you could cover a whole huge span of history and wind up running your civilization in a multitude of different ways, or focusing on different aspects, whether it be like science or technology advancement, or military hegemony, that type of stuff. um, but the kicker there is that as much as I've planned to start playing the game, I've never taken a step of like, yeah, I'm gonna buy this so I can try it. I've always been like, oh, I'll play as England for like the 3,000th time in Medieval 2, and that'll keep me busy for like a week or two. And next thing you know, it's out of my head. So that's definitely something I'd like to get into. Um, just given that like most of the strategy stuff I've played throughout my career as a gamer has always been anything like medieval or historical based. So it seemed like a natural fit. I just never, I kind of always overlooked it. Knew it was there, thought about it, but never did it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that'd be right up your alley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and like you, Russ, I've really seen nothing but good things about that game, or that series rather. Um,
So you haven't played it either, Joe?
no, I haven't. I've seen gameplay of it. I've watched many a true nerd play it here and there. But I feel like that game is probably a little bit too uh above my ability to think. So I feel like I probably wouldn't enjoy it because it would be too much of a learning curve for me. But then again, I don't know. Like I said, I've never played it, so I'm probably, one of those people that might enjoy it too, because I also like those historical strategy games because it just so happened that Russ and I both happened to be fans of the Total War series and really didn't talk about it until one day I was like, "Oh, hey, Russ, I really like this game called Rome Total War," and he's just like, "Oh, really? I've been playing those games for years, man."
Yeah, by the time I met him, I had already been playing Medieval 2 for close to 4 years by that point. And obviously we talked about Rome Remastered a while back, but I had always gone for the medieval stuff first because I was always a much bigger fan of like swords and shields than uh, swords and shields, but different. So no, then Roman type of stuff. But Civilization kind of runs the gamut of all kinds of different stuff. But from what I've always heard, you can like it gets very anachronistic after a while, and part of me kind of wonders if that's one of the reasons I steered clear for a little bit. In that, like, you could wind up having a country that has no rightly business being in a particular time period after a while, or be way, way ahead of where you ever should be technologically for a certain period of history. So part of me has to wonder if that's one of the reasons I had never quite gotten involved in it, but that shouldn't dissuade me from trying it.
Simply just because it's too ahistoric.
Well, I mean, the impression I get with it is that, like, you can have like technological advances that are way, way further past where you should be by a certain time period. Um, I can't really say definitely any specifics because I haven't played it, but
Mm-hmm.
like that to me was always like that's kind of cool, but at the same time, like I'm not sure I necessarily want like the ancient Roman Empire having nuclear warheads. So
Well, I don't think it's necessarily something that should dissuade you from playing it because I think more so it's like not you probably shouldn't think of it as ancient Rome with nuclear warheads. It's just like the flavor of ice cream that you're getting when you go to the shop, so to
that's a good
speak.
point. And the thing is that, like, if I wanted something that was really, really historically accurate, I probably wouldn't be playing Total War either.
Mm.
I probably should be, as much as it pains me to say this, I probably should be playing Crusader Kings. As much as you've told me to play it, if I wanted something more
Yes.
historically accurate.
Mm. Love that game.
Yeah, Joe's over here like he's making like the Montgomery Burnsian like finger pyramid of evil
Excellent.
contemplation.
Yes.
When I tell him I should play Crusader Kings,
You
so
should. You would love it.
yes, yeah. I know. I'd like to actually like have a life that exists off of my computer. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that
Y-
might be or do you have something to say, Mark?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, both of you should definitely play Civilization. I've never played it myself. It's not really my type of genre, but I wouldn't sell yourself short there, Joe. I mean, if you
Mm.
can figure out Rome, it seemed like there was a lot going on when, in episode 1 when I was watching that gameplay footage for that game and you guys were talking about it. I feel like if you could figure that out, you could probably do Civ.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that might be a good point to transition over to my game that I have seen people play.
Totally.
Um, is related to Crusader Kings. I've really have been interested in playing Europa Universalis 4. It's been sitting there
Okay.
on my Steam wish list, I want to say for at least a year now, and every so often it goes on sale from $40 to $5, and I'm always hesitate to buy it because it's just another Paradox game, But the Paradox is like if EA was a good guy game
Oh
developer.
God.
So like they'll nickel and dime you for all of the content in the world, but for the most part, their content packs are pretty hefty. So I would say it's worth like the $5 to $10 of each content pack that you get. So I and as Russ was saying, I've been playing Crusader Kings now for about a year or two. I've
Oh, the
played
third one. You played the second one for how many years?
yeah, so I've played Crusader Kings 3 for about a year, and then Crusader Kings 2, I want to say for about maybe a
3?
year. Well, no, not 3. I'd say it's probably closer to 2 before that. It's one of those games that it came out back. Well, Crusader Kings 2 came out back in 2012, and they released the final content pack in 2019. So it's one of those games that is getting it's a series that kind of gets love and attention from the developer throughout the entire life of the game, and so that's kind of why I wanted to check out EU4, because it's basically just, instead of the medieval era, it's
It's in space, right?
It's a colonial.
no
It's in space. Nice.
no, that's what's it called, shit, it's related to it because it's all fuck. Here, while I talk about EU4, I'm gonna look up.
Colonize the moon.
No, so EU4 is it's the age of exploration and colonization in Europe. So you're basically just rushing to conquer the world and colonize. So yeah, I really just want to learn more about that game and play it, because it seems like it's right up my alley. If it's anything like Crusader Kings, I should have no problems with enjoying it. It's just I'm always hesitating to buy it because I know I'm gonna get sucked into it, and I know my wallet's gonna be crying for help.
Now see, this is the way I felt about Skyrim. I knew I was going to get sucked into playing that, and wouldn't you know it, I've spent how many hours now? 99 hours.
Stellaris is the space one.
Oh yeah, Stellaris. I've heard of that one.
Mhm.
And again, probably good like half of that time is me just letting it stay on pause with the screen off. But yeah, Stellaris is another one I've heard of as well. I mean, Paradox does a good bit of those type of like, um, I guess you can call them RTSs. I mean, they're real time. There's no like overworld thing where time stops and you can make decisions, or
Well,
can you do that,
you
Joe?
can pause time, or yeah, you can pause time and have it speed up or slow down depending on what you want to do or how quickly you want time to go by. So like I'm not really quite sure exactly how EU4 works, but I'm assuming it's just like with Crusader Kings. There's a
I
start
would
date.
imagine.
Yeah, there's a start date, and then there's an end date, and anything in between is up to you. You basically just tell your own story, or of your country, or of your kingdom, or of your empire, or whatever it is you're building. So, the reason why I'm really drawn into Crusader Kings is because it's one of those games that it's completely open. It is a medieval sandbox RTS game. So
Right.
your focus is always going to be on the characters, If there's ever a game that I could recommend, and I'll talk about it more when we get to game themes that we would like to recommend, I recommend, Crusader Kings. But yeah, EU4, I really want to check it out. It seems like it's right up my alley. And I don't want to spend all that money on another Paradox game. That's the only reason why I'm stopping. Stopping there.
Understandable.
So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
All right. Yeah, so I guess I will bring up my next series that I want to get into, and that is Persona.
Hmm.
Yeah. Have you played any of the Persona games?
I haven't, but I've seen some gameplay of especially Persona 5. It definitely, if you're an anime fan, you're probably gonna really like Persona 5 from what I hear. So yeah, that's another JRPG, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah. And it's another one that I haven't gotten into yet, and it's been going on for quite a long time. I think it started in the maybe late '90s on maybe
Mm-hmm.
PS1. I want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, haven't played it yet. But I keep seeing it online. It always looks interesting to me, and I first really took interest with Persona 3, which came out on PS2
Mm-hmm.
because a close friend of mine got it, and he was always telling me about it. Back in the day when he was playing through this game, and it always seemed pretty cool to me. You're this group of school students, and it's half of the game is kind of living life as a school student and doing all that
Mm-hmm.
sort of stuff,
Yeah.
and half of it is this more fantasy craziness. I wish I knew more about it. I mean, I need to play it, right? But
Yeah.
that's where I really first caught wind of it, and wanted to. I first started it got on my radar, but I didn't really think about it until maybe 4, and now 5. Is somewhat new over the past couple of years that came out. So I see it and it looks really cool. Looks really stylized. I always hear great things about it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it'd be something fresh for me to try out.
Yeah, it looks like another one of those cell shaded games too, right?
Yeah, it has more cartoonish type of anime inspired graphics for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
The ironic part with those is that they usually tend to age better than the more realistic looking ones,
Yeah, I know
ironically
you, I
enough.
know, I know you have Wind Waker in your mind right now.
Yeah, that's the
Well, that's
first one
not
that
the
came
only
to my
one,
mind.
but I mean, yeah, but that's definitely one of them. Those graphics have aged fairly well, and I would imagine Personas would as well.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. That's totally fair. The cell shaded is nice because they're not going for realism. They're just trying to make something that looks nice at the time, and
Yeah,
they can
look,
do a
and
pretty good job of that.
I mean another game that's cell shaded that always like jumps to my mind right off the bat. It's mentioned is Okami on the
Yeah,
PS2.
that's actually exactly what I was thinking about too.
That is a gorgeous game. I think that game came out really early on in the PS2's life cycle,
Yeah,
and
PS2.
people are still talking about it to this day. It is
yeah,
gorgeous.
I remember seeing that game being out for, I think it was out for the GameCube too, wasn't it? I
I'm not
feel
sure
like it
exactly
was.
how many consoles it came out for. I know they
Ooh,
put
let
it
me
on the
look into it.
Wii.
That may have been it. That may have been it.
It could have been it.
Okami
Let's see
was
here.
released
Yep,
on Nintendo Switch,
the
PS4,
Wii.
PS2, Wii, PS3,
It was
Xbox One,
the Wii,
and
not the GameCube.
Mhm.
Microsoft Windows. Yes.
Yeah, and I actually maybe I don't know within the last couple of years I bought the PS4 remaster because my fiance was interested in that. So she spent a lot of time playing it, and I watch her play it, and the game looks gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
I had that game for a while. I think I still probably have it on my shelf somewhere. But it's not playable. I loaned it to my friend because he wanted to play it, and
mhm.
when he returned it to me, he had it for like 6 months, and when he finally returned it to me, like the disc was all scratched the fuck up and
Oh,
Oh
geez.
no,
unreadable. So yeah, I
that's no good.
yeah. So
You had it for PS2?
yes. So needless to say, I've never lent him a single game since that.
Yeah,
Surprised
but
you're
yeah.
still friends with the person.
Well,
Well, you can get a loose PS2 copy for pretty cheap,
yeah.
just the disc if you want Okami, or if it wouldn't be too expensive to just go ahead with the remaster if you
Hmm.
ever wanted to jump back
Yeah,
into it.
I'm sure I could get it on Steam. So yeah,
Yeah,
whenever
that too.
I
But
feel ready to return to it, I probably will.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, but Persona, that's my next one, and yeah, I don't know. It's just always been on the edge of my radar. I guess I hear about it here and there, and I get interested in it again, and then I don't know. There are a lot of games in that Shin Megami Tensei series,
Hmm.
and I don't I haven't played any of them, so part of me thinks it's just tough to know where to start sometimes. But I think I would start with probably Persona 3 and then do 4 and 5. But that's another series that if you're looking for physical copies like I do, it's definitely going to cost you a lot of money.
Hmm.
Like the original Persona games are worth hundreds of dollars right now. It's out of control. So, uh, yeah, that's my pick.
Nice.
Right?
Ace.
It's ironic you say that too, because I've been bouncing around two ideas for like the second one I wanted to talk about, and ironically enough, one of
Ace
the ones I
Combat.
thought it was Ace Combat. Yep.
Oh, nice.
Um, the reason for it is because like I've always had a thing for flight simulator games, since when I was a kid, and I think the first one that kind of gave me the bug for it, ironically enough, was Star Fox 64. Even though it's not really a flight sim, but it gave me the bug for flying, and Rogue Squadron and X-wing Alliance kind of did me in terms of that, especially X-wing Alliance. Um, but the ironic part is that like I always liked games that had flying, even if it wasn't Star Wars. Um, but I always kind of shied away from getting involved in Ace Combat because I always heard it was pretty hefty on your system in terms of what it required. Um, so I was always kind of shying away from that. But at the same time, like I always wanted to try it because it seemed like kind of similar to the flying in Battlefield, like I guess 3 and 4, but with a focus on that rather than being just a part of it itself.
Yeah, I could see you liking those games, and they're probably the ones that are nicely accessible and wouldn't drain you of too much time. Shouldn't be too huge of a time commitment, I'd imagine.
No, I wouldn't imagine it would be, and it's definitely something that's kind of right up my alley when it comes time for that kind of stuff. Because some people are not a big fan of like the flying thing, and kind of gives them like the a little bit of the seasickness scene, like the skies turn upside down, all that kind of stuff. I love it. It's great.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's definitely one that I would definitely look forward to trying. If for no other reason than I can never seem to keep a plane in the air all that long in Battlefield 5 because there's always some jerk flying a fighter out there who's trying to shoot down bombers. So
I think you lose more planes in Battlefield to the top 3 inches of a tree that you graze,
look,
and it
it's not
immediately annihilates you.
it's not necessarily my fault that for some reason the tree seems to be made of concrete.
Yeah, I think even if it was concrete, your plane should go through the top 3 inches of the tip of it. But yeah, it's
Well,
definitely made out of something unearthly.
well, didn't you hear back in World War II, the Nazis actually developed some really interesting technologies. So one of those was anti-aircraft trees, or
Oh,
Yeah, you
a
know what? Those Nazis,
AAT.
they keep coming back. They always strike again.
I mean, they actually, oddly enough, they actually developed like the first like jet fighter aircraft, like two of them actually
Yes,
in
they
World
did.
War II. So it's always kind of funny because like one of the first games I ever played for the Xbox 360, which how like sometimes you get like a system and the first game you get for it is like some no-name game that's kind of decent, but it's not the big game for the system.
Yeah, but you remember it anyway because that was your first game on that
E-
system.
exactly. The first one I had for my 360 was Blazing Angels, which was like a World War II flying game.
Yeah, I heard of that
Eh,
one.
I actually played it again recently to see if it was kind of like I remembered it and kind of fuel that World War II flying bug before I decided to put myself back in the line of fire in Battlefield 5. And one of the final missions of that game is you're actually like going for Berlin at the end of the game like they did at the end of the war, and you wind up actually fighting one on one with one of the experimental German fighter jets. And it was always kind of cool that like, man, this thing's kind of crazy. I didn't even know they had that in World War II. But this was like me at age like 17, not knowing any better. So Yeah, I always kind of had a thing for the flying games, and Ace Combat is one of the ones I always thought would be kind of cool to try.
Yeah, another no-brainer for you for sure.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that that was your first Xbox 360 game, whereas when I got my Xbox 360, my first games were Call of Duty Black Ops and Madden 11.
Somehow I always wound up having like a Madden game as one of my first games with a system. I don't
Yeah.
know how. I had like Madden '02 for the GameCube for some reason, and I think I played it a grand total of 3 hours maybe.
Mm.
I think my first game I got for 360, the one that I was really looking forward to at the console, was Dead Rising.
Ooh,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
I
That
love
was
There
that
a,
you
that
go.
game.
was a great game.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
any game where you get to go into a mall, I mean, that's enough of a selling point right there, right?
Yeah, I was hoping that was the one I was thinking of because for some reason I always get Left 4 Dead and Dead Rising confused with each other because I never played them.
Yep,
And
Dead Rising is the mall.
Dead Rising is like a sleeper. It's really good. I mean, it hit its peak when it first came out, and then kind of like I feel like it got brushed under the rug, and it's like a very like cult followed game.
Yeah, it's it's had follow-up games. There was, I think, what, three are there, or is there a fourth one
No,
yet?
no, no, no. It's just Left 4 Dead, and then Left 4 Dead 2.
Oh,
Uh,
sorry, I thought you were still talking about Dead Rising. Never mind.
oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. Left 4 Dead 2 came out like I want to say less than a year later, so they
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I think I played the first one. I don't know if I did the second one though.
hmm. But no, as far as Dead Rising goes, own Dead Rising 2, and like the Dead Rising 2 where you play as Frank West.
Off the record.
Yes, off the record, yeah.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
think my favorite one out of the three of them is Dead Rising 2, but you know,
Okay.
yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I never went past the first one, but the first one was definitely a memorable game for me, and I'm glad that that was an early 360 release. I really had a lot of fun with that. But
yeah,
it's interesting that you mentioned Left 4 Dead, because that same developer is coming out with a zombie shooter later this year called Back for Blood.
yes.
So yeah,
I'm
if
I'm
anyone
that one's on
anyone
my
listening,
radar.
yeah, anyone listening wants to is really jonesing for another Left 4 Dead, this is pretty much a spiritual successor.
Mhm. Yeah, that's on my radar. And I keep telling Russ, dude, we need to get people together to play Left 4 Dead 2. And he's just like, oh, I don't know. The guys might not be interested in that.
I know you probably would be, Mark. I'm not much for like zombie type of stuff. I can kind of take it or leave it personally. Um, you know me, I'm more of a sci-fi type of person, but I'm sure you two would have a blast with that thing.
Oh, hell yeah.
They're fun co-op games, yeah. And like I said, I know I have the first one. Can't remember if I got the second one or not. But yeah, they definitely kind of went under the radar after they first came out. Definitely more of a cult classic at this point, for
Hmm.
sure. You never
But
actually said your second game, did you, Joe? You talked about
he did,
you went
yeah.
off
Yeah, no, I
Left
didn't
4 Dead
talk
and
about my
Dead Rising.
second game. Yeah. So thanks for keeping us on track there, Marcamune.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so my second game that I kind of wanted to try but just never got around to was shit, what's it called? My brain has not been processing properly this week. I have it also here on my my Steam wish list, The Evil Within 2. So I actually played
Yeah.
through, I want to
Shinji
say,
Mikami made him, right?
yes, he did. So um I played through, I want to say, like 2/3 to maybe like 3/4 of the first Evil Within, and then just never came back to it for whatever reason.
Hmm.
I was just like, all right, I'm gonna put it down. I'll come back to it later because maybe like a new game came out, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna play that, and then I'll go back to Evil Within, and then just never did. Um, and I heard nothing but praise about Evil Within 2. It was just the original, or it was Evil Within 1, but added on mechanics, and it just improved on everything that the first game did better, from what I heard at least.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely. I know you're definitely more of a horror guy, so you would definitely be interested in those. Yeah, you should definitely go for the sequel.
Hmm.
Finish the first one, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
want to go back and finish Evil Within 1 before I move on to 2. But yeah.
I don't know how far along it is, but I remember hearing that the first Evil Within had a Resident Evil Easter egg. Did you get to that
Yes,
point?
yes, yes. It that happens really early on. So it's like
Okay.
it's the Easter egg where it's like basically like the first zombie in Resident Evil 1 where you come up from behind and then
Oh,
the head drops to the ground and
yeah.
turns. It's like a one for one recreation of it, and
Nice.
it's a nice homage to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was always such an eerie scene when you see that first zombie
Oh
in the
yeah.
original Resident Evil. That freaked me out the first
Oh
time I
yeah.
saw it.
It's
That's a butt
terrifying.
ugly zombie too,
Yeah,
you know?
I remember. I think I might have been like 6 or 7 years old when my parents bought
Oh
that
God.
game. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
that's about the age I was. Yeah.
yeah,
Dude, I was busy playing Mario Kart 64 at age 6. What the
so
heck?
like my parents were relatively young when they had me, so they weren't really like too into like the video games or really like very knowledgeable about it. They because they were young, they had to just go to work, and they kind of like left me to my own devices to kind of like entertain myself because I was a pretty
Okay.
easy kid growing up too. Like my mom would tell me I'd wake up and go downstairs, grab myself a pack of Pop Tarts, and pop in the Lion King and the VCR and just watch TV until my mom woke up. You know,
Very
so
independent.
yeah, and so when I would look at games, I'd be like, "Oh, cool! This looks like a cool game, Mom. Can I get it?" And so she saw a picture of a dude with a shotgun or a gun on the front cover, and she's like, "You know what? Sure, why not?" And so,
I'm
and so, like I'm playing it as like a 6 or 7 year old, going, "Ooh, this game is spoopy." And then I go through, and I'm like, "Oh, oh." Oh, and
You
so
dropped your juice box after that shit.
my Pop Tarts were all over the floor. I was like, "Mom, I'm scared." I was like so scared to play that game, and she's like, "Okay, so then don't play it. Play your Spyro. I don't know what to tell you."
Yeah.
My God, and here I am getting like freaked out by like the Andros robot head in like Star Fox 64 at age 8. Man,
Well, I grew up in a similar household, I think, Joe, because there was like no filter as far as any of the media that I really consumed at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so yeah, my mom and dad didn't really care if
Yeah.
me or my older brother were playing these games. I remember during the PS2 era when I was still pretty young. Obviously not 6 or 7. I was older than that, but I wasn't old enough to be working yet or have money to buy my own games. So I remember Manhunt came out.
Mm.
Do you remember
oh
that?
God, I remember that. I remember hearing about that.
Very controversial game,
Hmm.
and I remember my mom got it for me
It's a
because
flower
she
picking simulator, right?
Yes.
well, she assumed it was the game of hide and seek that us kids would play in the backyard in the
Oh
Oh,
no.
neighborhood. So,
nice.
yeah, I mean,
I
then
mean, she's
the
not
game.
wrong. It really was hide and seek, just not what you were expecting.
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
it was hide
that's
and seek with extra steps.
Yeah.
true. It is. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I mean, the first step. I mean, I never won a game of Manhunt in life by putting a shopping bag over someone's head, beating them over my knee with it, and then cracking their neck. But
That's because you never tried hard enough.
yeah, right. That's probably true. I was never an all-star Manhunt player,
A,
but
a sweaty, salty manhunt player.
The sweatiest.
oh yeah, good times playing Manhunt.
Mm.
Both the video game and in real life.
Hmm. Yeah, they don't call it the most dangerous sport for nothing. Oh my God.
Do you have anything else to say about Evil Within?
Uh, nah. I mean, simply because like I never finished the first one, and it's been a while. I think I played the first one back in 2014, so it's not even really fresh in my mind anymore. So it's one of those games that I've just been itching to get back into because
Yeah,
I'm really into like the horror games,
for
and
sure. Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big fan of Shinji Mikami too. So.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, personally, I'm not into horror games in general. But I do love Resident Evil. Because I grew up with that, so
Hmm.
always love going for those. But definitely, yeah, play Evil Within for
Yeah.
sure. Um, I do have another game. I don't know if you guys cooked up any more games that you're itching to get into, but I'm full of them. So I do have another one that might be on your radar too,
Okay.
and that is the Dragon Age series.
You know
Mm.
what? I've never played that, and I heard that's pretty good. Wasn't that was that a BioWare
It's
thing?
BioWare, yeah.
Yep. I know
So,
another series they started. I'm gonna recommend for somebody to play.
oh yeah, we'll get to that, but yeah, BioWare, fantasy RPG seems like it would be right up my alley. But that first game came out. This was a while ago. This was an Xbox 360 game, PS3, that kind of generation, and it has that combat system of the older BioWare games, that turn-based, kind of like Knights of the Old Republic style combat system. Of
Mhm.
course, I'm sure that's what Russ is going to bring up, but Knights of the Old Republic is another game that I have yet to play. But really, with both the first Dragon Age and Knights of the Old Republic, they both seem to have a similar combat style that just never really piqued my interest, never seemed too interesting to me. Always thought it kind of looked weird the way it was set up, how you're in this 3D environment with these realistic looking characters, but you're moving around slowly and stopping to make actions. That whole kind of combat system,
Mhm.
it was just kind of a turn off to me. So I passed up on the first Dragon Age, figuring, if the combat didn't suck me in, I didn't want to be stuck for dozens and dozens of hours playing this game if the combat wasn't interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I can kind of really relate to that too. I've played Knights of the Old Republic 2 for a few hours,
Mhm.
and I didn't enjoy the combat. It felt very RuneScapey to me, if that kind of makes sense.
I haven't played RuneScape,
So
but
basically, it's
mhm.
you select your command, and then they stand there and they attack, and you can still move around and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So maybe RuneScape isn't like the best way to describe it, but that's like the first thing it reminded me of when I started playing it.
Okay.
It's very like it controls like an MMORPG.
Yeah, I might have actually played it for like the first hour or so back in college. I think maybe Russ had it laying around,
Mm-hmm.
so I
Which
might have
game?
tried. We're talking about Knights of the Old Republic,
Oh, perfect. Good. Okay.
but we're
There we go. I've
comparing
come
it.
back at the right spot.
Yeah, we're comparing it to the first Dragon Age because it has a similar combat system, and Joe and I were just both thinking that combat system just seems a little janky. I do want to look past it
It is.
though, because you know I don't. I've heard more things about KOTOR than Dragon Age, and I know KOTOR, both 1 and 2. They're classic games. Some of the a couple of the best Star Wars games that you can play. So I do want to try and look past the combat system eventually and sit down and finally play it. But that's the main reason why I never got into Dragon Age, because it looked like it had that similar style of combat that just didn't captivate me, and I didn't want to be stuck with something like that I didn't enjoy for a long RPG. And then
Yeah, I mean the combat
yeah,
feels really passive as far as KOTOR is concerned. It feels passive. You just
I
select
mean,
your
it is. I
attacks
mean,
and that's
the
it.
unfortunate part is that like you're talking about a game where you have essentially based off of D&D the combat system where there's like too many feats and too many force powers to be mapped to any given button. So it really just becomes a series of for first do this, then this, then this, then that type of deal. And yeah, it does feel a little janky. I mean, it never really bothered me very much, but I could
mhm,
definitely see like if you were coming from an RPG game where you could actually have like full time control over what your character does and how they attack,
like an
that
action
could be a little
RPG.
odd. Yeah, I could see how that would definitely be an issue.
But it's not even the passive nature that is a turnoff for me. It really shouldn't be, because I'm a fan of tactical RPGs like Final Fantasy Tactics and games like that. But maybe just because when you go into a game like that, you have a grid or something like a grid, and you're moving squares or whatever
Hmm.
and choosing your attacks. And I don't know, maybe because it feels more like a chess game or
Yeah,
something,
like
the
like
No,
an
combat feels
I
better to
definitely
me.
understand. Yeah,
isometric game, kind of like the old school Fallout's.
Yeah, and I haven't played Fallout 1 or 2, but yeah, I mean, like tactical RPGs, I do like that. So I'm fine with that slower paced style.
Hmm.
hmm
So I do want to give it another try. but it didn't help that I heard Dragon Age 2 was kind of divisive. I guess they went for an action RPG, but they really changed the way the game played, and a lot of people weren't happy with Dragon Age 2.
Was
But
that
then,
around the time that BioWare was bought by EA?
maybe I don't know if they were owned by
Let me take a
EA at the
look.
time,
I'll take a
but
look.
uh, yeah, it's a shame because you have BioWare. I mean, you have Dragon Age 1 and 2, which seem I'm on the fence about whether or not I would like them. But then the third one, Inquisition, that game looks awesome. It looks like they kind of nailed it. It's full on action RPG, I believe. It's not turn based at all. So it's a shame because I'm someone who likes to get the backstory and play the games from the beginning of the series when I can. And I'd like to play Inquisition. Looks cool, but haven't played the 1 and 2, so that's why it's a series I have not gone into.
Oh, just for the record, yes, it was BioWare was owned by Electronic Arts when Dragon Age 2 came out. So I could definitely see
Gotcha.
it kind of had the same deal go on as like Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2.
Okay.
I mean, like, and you and I both know, Mark, that like, I mean, Mass Effect 1 is my favorite out of the three
Same.
because we don't acknowledge Andromeda. Um,
I haven't
no,
played Andromeda yet, but I hear it's
not
not to be
good.
overlooked.
Yeah, I mean,
No, no,
the
no.
thing is
You
that
no, because it seems like you're dismissing it, but I'm saying that
oh, not to be overlooked.
yeah, not to be overlooked. I hear that. Yeah, I know it had a rough launch, and it might not live up to the trilogy of games. But I hear that after the patches, it's actually pretty solid and worth a try. It's still on my radar. It's on my list.
Okay, I may have to take a look into it then, because I mean,
Yeah, I
all
think
like
it's $5 right now.
I don't know if I can afford that. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, I mean, Dragon Age would definitely be something that would be kind of not only right up your alley, but I think right up mine as well. So,
Yeah, definitely. Do you
okay.
guys have others? I mean,
Um, there's one I had looked at that I was kind of thinking about, and the game is Elite Dangerous, which is like a space sim, like a multiplayer, like an
like a
MMO space sim.
is that dogfighting Elite Dangerous?
Yeah, and space exploration. The issue I have with
Okay.
it is that for some reason I tend to steer clear of like space games that aren't Star Wars, with like one or two exceptions, and I don't know why that is. Um,
Hmm.
and I
Yeah,
don't know
because
if
you like
it's
sci-fi, so why wouldn't you?
I don't know. It's just like I think Star Wars kind of hits that level of like sci-fi, but still fantasy-ish, and the other ones are like pure sci-fi. There's only
Yeah, I
like
can see
one.
why you like Mass Effect as well, because you do have like the biotic powers and things that are a bit like
Yeah,
fantastical there.
and part of the reason I got it too was because it was made by BioWare. So I was like, okay, well, it's got to be a halfway decent game, so let's see what it's about. And the first Mass Effect exceeded all expectations as far as I was concerned, minus inventory issues. But that game was fantastic. As a matter of fact, that's definitely something I would recommend to a certain somewhere around here to give another try.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, that we can always come back to more games that
We'll
you'd like
get
to
there.
try, Mark.
We will get there.
I feel like it's just a natural point to kind of talk about it, though, Russ, because
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Mass Effect was a game that I just couldn't get into. I gave it a fair shake, not once, not twice, but on 3 separate occasions. I've tried to get
Yeah.
into this game.
You start
And
with the first one.
yes, and I
How
just
many hours did you say you spent on each take?
um so my first two, well, my first foray into Mass Effect, I probably played it for about 4 hours, and then was just like, all right,
Oh, so
uh,
you basically finished the intro and got to the Citadel.
yeah. And so I was just like, all right, it's okay, I guess. And
You didn't even meet the best character in the game.
right, and so then everyone kept telling me how great of a game it was, and so my friend loaned me her copy of the game to give it a shot because she just couldn't believe that I just wasn't interested in this game. She's like, no, you keep it as long as you need to. You play this game, and you tell me how great it was. I was like, all right, sure, fine. For you, I'll do it.
That's a good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, clearly, she really likes this game. It's important to her. I'm going to play it. I hope I enjoy it. I played for about 10 hours, and then I was just like, I can't. I just can't. And then I gave
Damn,
it back to
that's a
her.
shame.
I gave it
And
back to
that's
her, and she was just like, you finished it already?" I was like, "No, no, I didn't."
that's
Oh
that's
no.
ironic too, because like Mark, I mean, I know you're pretty much of the same mind with me of this, but that the first game is fantastic.
Oh yeah, that's as I mean I really do need to branch out and play more sci-fi games. But in terms of a game, if you're looking for a sci-fi game that makes you feel like you are a space explorer going from planet to planet, you're inhabiting these, you're in a different world with all these alien races. To me, it does not get better than the
Mm.
first Mass Effect. That's a top 10 game for me.
Yeah, and
And I
honestly, I
oh, go
don't
ahead.
know what it was that kind
I
of
know what it
like
was.
it kind of made me
I
go, it's too much like Star Wars: The Phantom Menace for me,
you know
and
you
I
know
just couldn't get sucked into it. I the world building was there. I cuz you know me, I love my world building, but
Hmm.
it just I felt like I was being dropped in the middle of a series of stories that I had absolutely no idea what was going on, and so I didn't have that thing to latch onto and go, okay, yeah, I want to find out what's happening next. As things were
this
happening, I just
Are
felt
you sure
so.
you weren't playing Halo Reach? Because I mean, if
yeah
I was playing Halo Reach, I'd be like, "Wow, this is a really weird Mass Effect series
yeah
story. I don't know what's going on here at all."
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I didn't have that thing where I would latch onto it and go, okay, I want to follow this through line to the next through line to the next through line. Like it didn't hook me. Like I
I
think it
have a
hooked
rough
everyone
idea of
else.
why it didn't, and this is something that is one criticism of BioWare's kind of um, general format of how they do a lot of these games. You probably lost interest right at the post introduction exposition dump
Mm,
part of the game. And all the major BioWare games I've played before have this where like the intro is great. Like the intro to the first Mass Effect is fantastic. It's great. It's got a lot of pulse pounding stuff.
yeah,
You get a lot of introduction to all the combat and all the mechanics, and then you get to the Citadel and everything slows down and you wind up spending more time talking to people than you do anything else.
yeah, but
And
that's the
it's not the
no, and
go
that's the
ahead.
thing though, because like the combat was fun. I really enjoyed the game mechanics, and I've played games before where like there was a slowed down focus on the conversation aspect of the game. Like
Hmm.
Fallout is a really good example. Fallout 1 and
Yeah.
Fallout 2, there's a lot of combat, but there's just as much dialogue and talking to characters and slowing down and bringing down the pace. But the difference between Mass Effect, and I think you might be onto something here, Russ, the difference
Hmm.
between what Mass Effect did and what Fallout did was Fallout left that up to your own discretion. Like you could go walk into places guns blazing and still
Hmm.
continue on with the story, whereas with Mass Effect, you were kind of railroaded into all of the talking.
Well, not entirely. To some extent, it was more linear. Like it didn't give you as much, freedom of choice in certain aspects beyond the whole like be a paragon or be a renegade type of deal, in your choices. But the issue with it was that, um, did you get far enough to meet Garrus for carrion?
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yes, I
you
did.
did,
I
and
met
you
I
stopped playing the game. You met the man, and you stopped playing.
The man
Oh
Russell,
man,
himself.
when you
oh.
loaned me your copy back when
Hmm.
you did, I played all the way through to the end of the Citadel when you leave the planet and move on to the next planet, and then I saw
Okay,
that as a point where I go, I don't know what's going on. I
that's the part where the game picks up. You
Yeah,
should have asked me. I would have told you.
yeah, I don't know, dude. I
That
just
that's the thing is
Well,
that like Mass Effect is one of those games where like when the combat is on, it's pretty intense. Except if you're like just fighting against a few random like pirates on a backwater planet you're exploring and you just blast them with the Mako's main cannon.
mm,
Um, but it really does like the battle stuff is pretty intense, but then the dialogue stuff is so low key that I could definitely see it feeling like hey, this was just really at a high point, and now we're having a nice little chat here. I can understand that. Um, but there's some spots in the game where there's even really fantastic dialogue sections that have a heightened feel to them. Like Mark, you remember the spot on Vermeer where you wind up actually like talking with Sovereign?
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's a part in the game where you actually wind up talking to one of the Reapers, and it's like it's intense because you're just on two totally different planes. Like you're trying to talk to it like it's another, being of the same magnitude,
oh yeah, you're
and
practically an ant.
yeah, exactly. Like you're basically nothing. And not only that, one of the most interesting parts of the first Mass Effect game, and obviously, John, I don't know if you're gonna go back and play it. I don't know if you mind if I spoil something or not.
I don't care at this point. I know
Okay.
all of your decisions don't matter by the end of Mass Effect 3
Oh no,
anyway.
no. Well, we'll leave that story for another day. Um, but that was one of the first games I'd ever played that told me pick one of your teammates, one of them dies and one of them lives. That's it. There's no way to save them both
Mm.
with Ashley and Caden. And I'd
Yes.
never seen that in the game before. And I was like, well, crap. I mean, Caden is like one of my people that does like tech and biotics. I should probably save him. And, find out later on that probably it would have been more of the canon choice to save Ashley. I actually went back and played through Mass Effect 1 all over again prior to Mass Effect 3 so that I could actually get the canon choice. Um, and it was kind of interesting because I'd never played a game that told me, all right, one of your two teammates is going to die. You have to pick one.
Yeah,
And
definitely. That's I feel like the gravity of the choices in that first game were crazy. I mean, the scale gets larger in 2 and 3, but some of the choices in that first game are brutal. Like if you're I don't know if it's called like charisma or speechcraft or whatever, isn't high enough, you get into an altercation with one of your squad mates and you pull guns on each other. And if you can't talk them down from that point of
with Rex,
aggression, you have to kill them, and they're gone from your party. So yeah,
yeah, there goes the other man, not Rex. Oh, you got to
and
calm him
then
down,
that
man.
yeah, and then that character, if he lives, he goes on to become a significant part of the next games. He becomes a leader in his people, but you can just
Yeah.
cut all of that out by not being able to talk him down.
But you know what? That's interesting that you bring that up because I'm really into games that allow for player choice, and that is clearly an example of dynamic player choice where they have an
Hmm.
entire storyline and a sequel of a game for a character that might not even make it into that sequel based on your
Well,
Yeah.
choices.
to be fair though, none of us knew that it was necessarily going to play all the way into that. At the time we played Mass Effect 1, like I didn't really have much of a clue that it was going to be that dynamically linked. Like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but at the time, I don't think any other game series did that to the extent like the choices you made in the one game actually would carry over with your save file to the next game. And those choices you made then changed the storyline in the next one. Like there were other games that asked you what you
Yeah.
had done, but nothing that like the way you actually played it
Nothing
affected
comes
it.
to mind with that kind of scale as
Didn't
in terms of game to game, but I think what Joe is getting at is just like the fact that the devs actually included all that extra story in the
Oh, of
follow-up
course.
games, all that extra work that they had to put in for a character that might not even be there for your
That's why I have
playthrough.
such mixed feelings about Mass Effect 3 because like it did such a great job of tying in all these characters from the first game and the second game and then just said, "Hey, we have a box with three different colored crayons in it and you get to pick red, green or blue at the
Yeah,
very
well,
end."
yeah, I was late to the series, so I knew that it was a disappointing ending at the end of 3. I was also late enough that I got the extra content that they added
Yeah,
on
I
to the
didn't.
ending. So that made it a bit better for me, but despite how the trilogy ended, it was really more about the journey for me. Doesn't ruin the trilogy.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Just because like you know, I think one of the issues Mass Effect faced was how do you tie together a series of that scope with a satisfying ending? Because there's really not a whole lot of room for maneuvering when you've basically laid what the expected ending of a series like that should be. I hate to draw parallels between the two, but I remember watching obviously like the last season of Game of Thrones after watching the entire series, and thinking to myself, like, the series has been, absolutely lauded in its, earlier seasons for its, not being afraid to kill off main characters. I mean, Sean Bean gets Sean Bean 9 episodes in, and you
Mm-hmm.
think he's actually going to be around for a while. I mean, pretty much every main character everybody got attached to, or about half of them, got ganked at some point and ceased to exist. And the thing is that, like, eventually the problem was going to be you are going to have to tie up the series, and there's only so many ways you can do it. And with Mass Effect, it was almost well, I won't say exactly similar, but it eventually was to the point where you've got to tie the series up, and there's only so many ways you can do it. So
Yeah, but
it's
it definitely could have been handled too, because I remember there are literally like 3 different colored fonts, and it's
hmm
just you kind of spirited away to this place where these things are, and you choose. It was really roughly done. They even if they were going to pigeonhole you into one of 3 options at the end, and your choices didn't matter as much, you could have at least given players 3 different quests or something to go on. I don't
oh,
know,
of
but
course. I mean, like, I remember not to go on more about Mass Effect 3 again, but I remember that being one of the first things that I actually like paid attention to on YouTube in terms of like game theory type of stuff, because there were a ton of theories about, like, was Shepard indoctrinated at the end? Which option was the one that actually, like, is he able to be alive at the end of the game? Does he survive? Is there an option that allows that to happen? Is there a reason why this is the correct choice and that one isn't? And I'm like, that's the first time I ever remembered paying attention to all that kind of stuff.
hmm,
Um,
yeah.
but I mean, the series itself, Joe,
Mm-hmm.
I if you can definitely get past the exposition dump on the Citadel before you start actually going out to, like, all the main different planets, like, I forget the one where you find Liara T'Soni. I don't think it's Nevaria, is it, Mark?
I
Like,
can't
that's the
remember
cold one.
exactly where you get her.
But, like, going there, going to the different places and getting the different teammates itself, the end of the game is great. Like, you can if your charisma skill is high enough, like your speech skills are high enough, you can actually even talk the final boss of the game into essentially, offing himself, except for the fact that, like, he's now more machine than man, or machine than what's the species for Garrus and
The
Saren?
the oh, Garrus,
Yeah, they're both
the
the same species.
Turian.
That's it, Turian. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Turian.
He's more machine than Turian now, and the machinery is controlled by the Reapers anyway. So what's the difference? But at the same time, like, that game gave you so many options, and it is so much more than just the talking with people.
Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
would probably like the second one better.
Joe, I'm never gonna tell you to completely put the game aside, but if you gave it a few tries like you have, then maybe it just isn't for you. I know we were in one previous episode we were talking about Final Fantasy VII, and you gave it a try once and then came back to it and liked it, but if you gave it a few tries, then
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's just not for you.
Yeah. And I can understand why it would be a game that you guys enjoy, because it's got all of everything that one could want in a game right there. You got the fast-paced action, you got the interesting characters, you got the amazing world building, you've got choices that matter to a certain extent depending on which game you play. But I just, like I said, just something about the game just didn't quite hook me the way that it seemed to have hooked everyone else, and I just
Mm.
didn't see what everyone else saw. And as
And
far
it's
as
all
I'm
good.
concerned, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that's my loss. And there's really only
I
so
will say
much.
you're missing out on, like, the best, like, pal you can have as a character in that game with Garrus for carrying.
Mm,
So.
Yeah, well, it's okay, Joe, because I'm pretty sure my game that I want to talk about that has I'm not gonna say that I didn't like. It's just a series that hasn't completely clicked with me, and it's a damn shame, but it's definitely gonna be one that you'll have something to say about,
okay.
and that is Fallout.
Hmm.
Now,
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna beat this drum as well, but go ahead, Mark. I want to hear
this
this.
Well, yeah, this might come as a surprise because I have actually played through Fallout 3, New Vegas, 4. I've played a lot of Fallout 76. I even played Fallout Shelter on my phone when that came out. I've played so much Fallout over the years,
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of hours at this point, but I keep wanting it to be something I really love, but it never quite clicks for me the right way. I think it has to do something. Part of it is the theme. I don't really like that whole retro 60s theme, even though it is post-apocalyptic. And the environments themselves, they're really dismal
Mm-hmm.
after a while, and I think
Agreed.
maybe I get tired of just going through brown and gray wastelands
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But theoretically, yeah, I should really love it, and it should be one of my favorite games. There's all it's an RPG with guns. VATS is fun to use. A lot of good storyline in those games, and quests and opportunities for exploration. But despite all that, and even though I've spent so much time playing these games, it's never clicked as one of my greats.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I'm actually kind of right with you there on that one too. Now, obviously, I've played less than you have, Mark,
Oh,
but
you've only
like
played 76.
I've only played 76, but
Which
I've
is a
watched a couple.
goddamn shame.
I know it's a crime. I get it, I get it. But I've watched a lot of gameplay of New Vegas, and I've watched quite a few retrospectives on it as well. And the thing is that like I find myself having a like all the mechanics are there that I would want to enjoy with it, but there's something about the setting itself. There's something about like the overall aesthetic of the game that I can't quite just delve right into, and I don't understand why. I think it might be again. I'm not a big fan of the post-apocalyptic type of thing, and I
Mhm.
think that's probably the reason why. But I I don't know. I literally can't place my finger on it, and I hate saying that too because I feel like I'm not giving it a fair shake. But at the same time, I'm like I can't get into it, and I don't know why.
Mm. It's your Mass Effect.
Yeah,
Kind of.
yeah. Maybe. Well, Russ, I would say before you make too many judgments, definitely play one of the legit games, the
Yeah.
Yeah.
single player offline ones.
Y-
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do need to give it a try because like New Vegas does definitely look better than
Yeah,
76. I mean,
and
hell, any game looks better than 76 did at the time.
that's the one that I would honestly, if gun to my head, someone said recommend me a Fallout game, that you think I might like. It's
I
gotta
see what you
be.
did there.
It's gotta be. It's gotta be New
Is
Vegas.
that gun to your head
Did,
held by a man voiced by Matthew Perry by any
Well,
chance?
well, listen.
did you intend that metaphor?
No, but it's clever that I did anyway. I mean, yes, I've intended it all along. No, but yeah,
I, I had a feeling he didn't intend it, but I'm like, it's kind of funny that he did say that. So
well,
Yeah, just like I totally was joking when I thought Europa Universalis was in space. Yeah,
yeah, definitely, it's got universe. It's got universe in it.
exactly. It must be a
mm,
space game.
Space Europe.
Space Europe, yeah, on the moon.
yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Joe. I'm sorry.
no, but Fallout New Vegas is one of those games that just it does what it says it's gonna do on the box. You're whoever you want to be in a playground where you can play any way you want to play. And the only thing you know is you're a pissed off mailman because someone shot you. And that's enough. That's all the character backstory that you need. You're just some pissed off mailman who wants to get his package back. And that's
You
it.
might say
It's
he
definitely
went
my favorite.
postal.
Yeah, and so like everything else that happens around you is just a result of you just interacting with the world, and it feels like an alive, vibrant world, especially with the factions mechanic. Like I haven't seen a game since Fallout New Vegas, to my recollection, do a faction system as eloquently and as beautifully as Fallout New Vegas has, because it's simple. It's two sliding scales that you know you do good things for them, you get more loyalty points for them. You do bad things to them, you get more like villain points with them, and you can have both of those bars for each faction maxed out, and like each level of reputation has its own name, and it's so much more than just your typical like post-apocalyptic RPG.
Don't
It
you
is.
get more benefits as you rank up with each faction?
Yeah, you
Benefits
do.
within the faction?
Yeah, you do. It gets to the point where you can call in like NCR Rangers to come and support you and
Yeah.
fight
Yeah.
alongside you. I love it. It's so good. I words cannot express my love for that game. That is like honestly Mount Rushmore for me of top games of all time. And I know we've talked about it before, like best games of all time, but like it's up there with Metal Gear Solid 3
Mhm.
and Metal Gear Solid. I know they're both in the same series. Cut me some slack. I really like Kojima.
It's up there with Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, it's hard to pin
Yeah.
down exactly what games we really kind of like cherish, but that one's up there. I don't know where it falls, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah, definitely try. I know you own it because Joe, you gifted it to us, right?
Yeah,
Oh, I bought it on Steam too.
Definitely play New Vegas.
yes.
Yeah, like I said, it's out of the Fallout games that I've done, that's my favorite.
Hmm.
That's on my list after Skyrim. So
All right.
Yeah, and I don't want to
So
lay claim to saying I've played all of the Fallout games because I certainly haven't. I've played maybe about like 6 or 7 hours into the first one and haven't touched Fallout 2 at all, which everyone.
There's spin-offs too. Like I think the original Xbox has something called like Brotherhood of Steel. I think it's a
Yeah,
first-person shooter, like
yeah, and
VR
I heard
stuff
oh,
like that.
nice.
really horrible things about it.
I'm sure it's awful, but I would definitely pick it up if I saw it for a good price.
Mm, yeah,
Just to
and
say you have it.
I don't
Yeah,
know
just
if
to
I would want to say that I
invite you
have
guys
it.
over and just play it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Sometimes the bad games are the most fun ones to
but
play.
I can also understand why you guys just couldn't get into it simply because of like the aesthetic or like the style of like the characters and like the environments and admittedly yes, Fallout 3 has not aged very well.
Oh no.
No, like aesthetically it's
I
just
could use a fresh coat of paint.
yeah, it's hard to look at and
New Vegas
it's
isn't the same engine, but at least it has better. I think the environments are nicer to look at in New Vegas.
yeah, it's just not all green. There's more there like even when you go into like factions camps, like there's a color filter over top of it just to give it its own distinct feel, you know?
Yeah, and of course, when you're in New Vegas itself, you have it's like a little Vegas, so you're definitely bombarded with
Yeah.
kind of visual overload there a little
Yeah,
bit.
it is. It definitely has that Vegas feel. I mean, I've never personally been to Las Vegas in my life, but I've seen it on TV. I've seen pictures of it, and it definitely is reminiscent of that type of like imagery that you would get when you see it.
Yeah, so the world has more character than the world in Fallout 3 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I will say this though, because when I played 3 New Vegas and 4, I played as a moral, upstanding character.
Hmm.
Now, I will say this: when I played Fallout 76, as Russ knows,
Oh.
I ma- I made a very unsavory character.
Oh, the used car salesman himself.
Yes, by the name of Spades Pachinko.
Oh my god.
And my goal was to just be a big time scumbag. He had like this long hair, bald on top. He wore a dirty tan suit, and aviator sunglasses, and like a handlebar mustache.
Oh my
Total
god.
grind ball.
Yep.
And I love that character. But I think whenever the next Fallout game comes out, I will buy it and I will bring Spades to that game and I will play as an awful person because I think I'm gonna have more fun playing Fallout as an immoral person.
Hmm.
Usually with games that have morality systems like Mass Effect, I want to do everything that gives me Paragon. Like Elder Scrolls, I'm not going to kill civilians. I want to, stay on the good side of the law and be, your typical hero. But I think Fallout, I would have more fun, and maybe it would finally really click for me if I was a complete asshole.
Maybe you just need that fix of being a bad guy. You need to be an ass. You know, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, because I never had that experience really in games, so
yeah,
I think
I
good
mean,
for
and
me.
if I were to pick up a Fallout game now, I'd probably play as more of like your chaotic neutral character. You know, who just do whatever it takes to kind of like get me to my own goals. You know.
Oh, I'd be straight up evil for
Yeah.
sure. Like totally looking out for myself, killing civilians, robbing people. That's definitely the way I think I need to play these games.
Yeah, it's always like that meme, like in Skyrim, you see the NPC sees, quick saving, and they see the player character unsheath their sword, and they're like, oh Jesus fuck. But
Yeah, and
that's
then you
that
go on a massacre and kill half the.
yeah, but that's gonna be
Oh
your
my
save
god.
file.
Yeah, yeah, it will. It'll just be my whole game. But yeah, there's just something satisfying about going up to an unsuspecting fool and, pinning their head to a nearby wall with a railway spike gun.
hmm
Oh,
Well,
with the
So,
railroad
Mark,
spike gun.
what if I
yeah.
told you go back into New Vegas and play that way? Would you do it?
Yeah, I would give that a try. I don't know when the next Fallout game is going to come out. I mean, Bethesda seems really swamped right now. Fallout 76 isn't a very old game. They were probably banking on that, keeping Fallout players
hmm
satisfied for years.
They got Elder
You know,
Scrolls coming
Elder
out
Scrolls 6,
eventually.
Starfield,
Yep, they got a lot on their
we
plate.
they
Well, I
do
mean,
have a lot.
Xbox just acquired them, so I mean, they might be putting more people into the studio now, more resources.
Maybe.
Maybe, but I'm sure they're working on it, or at least it's at least in the early draft stages. But yeah, I would definitely if I would go back to that game and try playing as a villainous character, I'd be curious to see how that would affect my experience.
Or I could recommend an alternate series for you. Have you played The Outer Worlds?
No, I have not. I hear it's
It's
very
good.
similar to
It
Fallout, though.
yeah, it's
It's on the list.
it's basically like the way and you could probably corroborate this with me, Russ. It's like Fallout New Vegas, but in space.
That
Yeah,
sounds pretty
it's a
cool.
good way to put it. Kind of has that aesthetic too, because like it does nail the kind of rundown feeling in space, like for ships and places, kind of the way Star Wars did, at least the original trilogy, where everything's not shiny and brand new. It has that kind of rundown and old feeling.
It feels
Um,
used.
but
Everything feels
yes,
used.
used. That's a good way to put it. Thank you. Um, yeah, it's a
Worn.
good game. I kind of almost liken it to I don't know how to put it. It's like a mix of three different styles of game. It's like a slight mix between Fallout, Knights of the Old Republic, and Mass Effect. It's kind of got some good parts
Okay.
stolen from each one of those, um, which is kind of cool. I really do like the fact that it does that. I played a good bit of the game, and it's pretty darn enjoyable. The only reason I didn't go back to it is I think once again I fell down the medieval two rabbit hole playing as England. So that'll happen from time to time, at least a good 5 times a year. Um, but yeah, it's definitely good. I would recommend it to you.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely one that's on the radar. I'll have to look into that. But so now, Russ, I think we need to get to you now about just a game that you just couldn't get into.
Yeah, Monster Hunter World. I could not get it. I could not get into the game, and the thing is that like it came with a great recommendation from you and everybody else in our group, and I couldn't get into it, and I don't know why necessarily. Because I mean, it's not like I don't enjoy playing games where you get to take down large enemies. I mean, I've played quite a few games doing that. I mean, hell, Zelda does that at least a good 10 times throughout the entire game.
Mhm.
But there was something I couldn't get into about the whole like go on this mission or go on this mission multiple times to get the materials you need to get this sword, and then there was like 12 different weapons available that you could pick from to start, and I'm like,
Yeah, there's a lot of options.
this is a little much. Start me off with like a sword or something. I mean, wasn't there like a gun sword or something like
I think
that?
there were a couple. I depend because there's so many different weapon types, and then you don't just have your sword. You could have also a really long sword, or a sword that's really long and also really big that's super heavy, or you could have like two short swords that you have quick attacks with. So it's a lot
Like
to take in at the beginning for sure.
yeah, it started to get to be a bit much like, fighting certain things like, fighting like a dragon or anything of that size was kind of cool. But like the one thing at the start of the game, like there's some freaking kaiju level monsters in that type of deal, like the volcano that, like the sentient volcano that walks or whatever that thing.
Yeah,
I
that's kind
forget
of
what
the main
thing of the
target
game,
that
right?
you're working towards.
And the thing is that like, I just I don't know. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't enjoy it because like it would seem like something that I would probably enjoy playing because I mean it's not, as kind of dim and dismal as the Fallout universe, even though
Oh, it's
I
very
know.
bright. I like the environments in the game.
Hmm. And there was just something about it that like you know how like when you play a game and you could tell within a few hours if you're going to enjoy playing it or if you just can't find a way to get into it. Like
Yeah.
you have that instinctive feeling, and for some reason, I probably played about 5, 6, 7 hours, something like that, and I couldn't get into it, and I don't know why. I really don't. I know you played it for a bit, for quite a while, so.
Yeah, I did. That was because that's the thing. For the longest time, Monster Hunter was a series that I really wanted to get into. I had one of the games on PSP, and I always thought it was a really cool game. But I know it's one of those that a lot of people play together, and I never really had a group to play with. So it was a series that I never jumped into. But Monster Hunter World felt like a really great point for me to really get back into the series and actually sink my teeth into it and finish a game and I did and I would say that Monster Hunter World is definitely one of my favorite games of the last generation. I really enjoyed it a lot. It definitely has some frustrating elements. There are times when it just takes too long to hunt down a monster, or you finally get to it and it flies away, and before you can kill it, maybe you run out of time and you have to start over. There's stuff like that, but uh, when you do find that monster and you finally have that epic showdown, it adds some gravity to the fight because you gotta take it out right now. You can't let it get away.
Hmm.
You're on a time limit. It's a big time limit, but it is a time limit that makes the fight a little bit more intense. But I really liked Monster Hunter World, and I want to play more of the games in the series.
Fair enough. I could definitely see that, and it may be something down the line where if I try it again, with a little bit of a different outlook on it, I may find myself getting more into it once I decide to kind of give it more of that initial chance. You know.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I know a bunch of you guys bought the game, even though you never. But I know after I finished the game and put it away, shortly after that, they came out with this big expansion for it. I think it was called like Iceborne or something like
Okay.
that. This big new expansion that added new areas to the game. So lately, I actually have been thinking about it, and I've been curious about what that might be like.
Hmm.
I'd like to check it out. So maybe one day we could jump back into it and play some of that newer stuff that I haven't seen. And maybe you could put your blinders on or something and just choose a regular sword and pretend the other weapons don't exist and give it another go.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could. I mean, I think more than anything else, it was just the fact that it was the mechanics of the actual hunt itself combined
Mm.
with like just they basically just like dumped every option available on you. I'm like, all
If it
right.
makes you feel any better, I did not really take too much advantage of all the different weapon types.
Hmm.
Pretty much stuck with a long sword throughout the my entire playthrough
Something tells me
because
I'd probably do that too.
yeah, because if you want to craft these other types of weapons that are up to date and on par with the similar kind of power level of the weapon you're using, that requires you to hunt down more monsters and get the parts to craft this
Hmm.
thing, and then who knows if you're going to like that play style or not. So that's another thing. I'm not a big fan of the grind, having to do the same thing over and over again to get parts, but eh, um, if you just stick with a few things, that's kind of part of it. It's not you can
I got to
usually
give it another chance because I probably gave up on it too quickly.
probably yeah. Um, Definitely, yeah. Give it another go, and yeah, we'll get to it eventually.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much covers ones we played but didn't like too much. Anybody else have any others
I do.
to add to it?
I do. And this is going to trigger you, Mark.
Uh-oh.
Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt.
Oh, I think Russ is getting getting fired up here. Yeah, well,
I think I just died inside a little bit.
So,
yeah, go for it.
Witcher 3 was one of those games when it came out. It came out like really close to Fallout 4. I think they released within a few weeks of each other. And I was real
2015?
Yeah, and so I was really hyped up for Fallout 4, and so I was just like, you know what, I'll Witcher 3 sounds interesting, I'll check it out whenever I get the chance. I'm playing Fallout 4, and so I did, and I played Fallout 4 for almost a year, not year straight, but over the course of that year, I played it almost constantly. I would play it in like, I'd say, tabulated up, I probably got 200 hours, give or take a few, on just logged in on my Xbox One before I got my PC, and now I have about like 80 hours in it on my PC. So
Is this Witcher 3 we're talking about?
no, this is
No,
Fallout 4.
Fallout 4.
And so a few years ago, there on a Steam winter sale, I picked up Witcher 3 along with a bunch of other games, and I had always intended to go in and play it, and I heard nothing but great things about it. And finally, I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to play Witcher 3. Jumped into the game, got sucked into like the introduction of the story. Where's Yennefer? Got to find Yennefer. Actually get into the gameplay, and that's where I stopped. And I don't know why, I just didn't enjoy it. I went through the entire tutorial with Ciri, got to the part where we were in the tavern in the very beginning of the game, talked to a bunch of people about where Yennefer was, got my first lead, hopped on my horse, and then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take a break. And that break lasted about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then I was just like, you know what? I want to give it a fair shake. I want to give it a fair chance. Started the game up fresh again, got to that same point where you hop on your horse and you try and follow a lead to go kill the griffin, went to the tower where you talked to the dude, and then I was just like, all right, I've had enough. I'm going to take a break. And
That's a shame, too. You kind of enough before the game even really started.
I know, and that's why I kind of, it kind of hurts me to say that I didn't enjoy it, because like, from what I did play, I did enjoy it, but like it was just like it wasn't enough to get me to want to come back after hopping off for a little bit. Like I even played the side quest where like the dude was crashed on the side of the road with his cart, and it turns out that he was like killing people or whatever. And yeah, I don't know what it was about The Witcher 3 that just didn't take me.
I think I sometimes have to wonder if the same thing that got you there is the same thing that got you for Mass Effect as well. Is that like, I'm not sure how well you always seem to like games where it feels like you're dropped in the middle of a world and there's a lot to figure out about it. Like I know you like, real good world building too, but like you take a look at something like, we talked about how you were a big Lord of the Rings fan. Okay. Well, Lord of the Rings has got a lot of dense world building, but it starts you in a smaller scope
Yes.
and builds it outward from there. And part of the reason I think you had a tough time with The Witcher 3 was that the scope is already wide to start when that game came out. Like my first entrance into the Witcher series was Witcher 3 on a recommendation from somebody I worked with who wasn't you at the time, ironically. And I found myself kind of just, kind of understanding the story more as I went along. But the gameplay was definitely quite good. Like it probably felt like one of the best like sword fighting games that I had played in a very long time, because the combat was fairly dynamic. You could counter, you could block, you had, it basically felt like what it would be to be a Jedi if you had a sword instead of a lightsaber, essentially. And
And you know what? I did enjoy the combat in that game, and it was very reminiscent of the old school Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King game. Like you had your quick
Mhm.
attacks, you had your heavy attacks,
Heavy attacks.
you
Yep.
had your parry, you had your ranged attacks. In this case, it was like spells. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it wasn't the combat for me. It was just I don't know. It was just, I think you kind of like you hit the nail on the head. It just felt like the scope was too wide to start, and that's probably what didn't
The
get me in to the
Well,
world.
see, the unfortunate issue with the Witcher series, and Mark, you could probably chime with this as well. Did you play one or two, Mark?
No, see, that was one of the only downfalls with me for The Witcher 3 because as I had mentioned in a previous episode, I love The Witcher 3. It's one of my favorite games.
Oh yeah.
And this might, it might be a little surprising because just earlier in this podcast I said how if I'm going to start an RPG series, I like to start from the beginning so I get the background. And Witcher 3, part of the reason why I waited so long until after it came out to finally play it is because I was just debating back and forth about whether or not I should play the first two games because I don't have a gaming PC. So as far as I know, they didn't release The Witcher 1 on consoles in any way. So I didn't have access to the first Witcher, and I heard that it was really clunky.
Yeah, that I've
And
Hmm.
actually seen a lot about that too. It was pretty clunky, and the story closely resembles the actual series, that like the TV series to some extent, I
okay,
think.
the books. Yeah,
Um,
because I
I
mean
don't know. That's the
the
thing.
TV
Like,
show's based on books.
yeah, I think the first one was roughly based off of it. I mean, I think they diverge more as the
Yeah,
games go on.
yeah, and then but I heard good things about the second one, which came out on consoles. I had access to that, but I figured, well, if, I don't want to start with the second one, and not if I'm not doing the first one. So eventually, I caved, and I finally played Witcher 3. And that was the one thing where time after time, meeting these different characters, I thought to myself, "Oh man, I can just sense the relationships that were built in the first two games, and I just don't have that understanding." That was the only downfall of my experience, and it had nothing to do with with the game itself. But yeah, to answer your question, I have not played The Witcher 1 or 2. I really hope that they put the first one on consoles and either remaster it or even give it a full on remake.
It would be nice too, because the issue with it, like The Witcher 3 is a fantastic game. And like we even talked about, like you said with the combat show, the combat feels great to play.
Hmm. Yeah.
The unfortunate circumstance for The Witcher as a game series is that they are such uneven quality between all three of them. Like the second one I've heard is pretty good. And
Yeah,
pretty closely related to the way the third one plays, just not as polished. Given the fact that it was a 360 game, that makes sense. Um, but the unfortunate part is that they are not any necessarily close in quality. There's a big disparity between them, and I think the issue is that because the lore for the series expands outward from the first game, but the first game is so clunky that it's like it's not worth playing. You'd be better off watching a video about the story of the
I
first
did
two
that
games
actually.
and
I
then
watched a
jumping to the
recap.
third.
I tried watching recaps, and
Hmm.
maybe I just wasn't watching the right videos, but the recaps didn't help me at all. They were all over the place, bombarding me with names and events.
Hmm.
Going into the third one, I had a slight sense of what happened in the first two, but I didn't know enough.
Yeah, it definitely took me going back and watching some videos about it to and there is a channel that does a fantastic retrospective on it, and I got to see if I can find that channel name real quick. Let's see here.
Have you
Give
watched
me a
the
Yeah,
second.
Have you watched the Netflix show, Mark?
yeah, I did watch it. I think I took 2 nights and I watched the first season.
Hmm.
I personally I was let down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed by it. There was some cool stuff in there. I'll watch season two, but personally, it's not one that I would rave about and recommend to people.
Hmm. Okay,
I
fair
Did you
enough.
like it?
Yeah,
I found the channel. Sorry.
what's that?
It's actually the person's name. The channel's name is the person's name, and it's Joseph Anderson.
Oh, I
And
know Joseph Anderson.
he's done two videos on, like, one on the first Witcher and one on the second, and I kid you not, they are rather in depth because the first one is 4 hours and 18 minutes, and the second one is 5 hours and 5 minutes. But it does a fantastic job if you have the time of explaining everything going on in followable detail without blasting you with a ton of names to have to worry
Okay,
about.
because I think I watched like 10 or 15-minute videos,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
so you can't really capture all that in that amount of time. A little
Yeah, and I
difficult.
mean,
I
4 to 5 hours is like standard fare for your video essays. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I watched it at the very start of the pandemic when I was like, well, crap, I got to find something to do with myself. I watched like the 1 4 hour video on the first one, the 5 hour video on the second one, and I think I watched a 7 hour video on Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So I'm like, man, I'm just finding ways to waste time now. But what it did do is it gave me a great in-depth understanding of like, okay, this is what the first game did. Here's the story. Here's how that fed into the second one, and the third game is very much dependent on the second game. The first game, I think, the story is a little bit more independent
Okay.
of what happens in the second and third, but the second game is very important in terms of relaying to the third game. And Joe, I could definitely understand too, because like it is tough to jump into a game where you're bombarded with a whole bunch of like unfamiliar terms, names, people, settings, and not be like, all right, this is a lot. This is kind of a steep learning
yeah,
curve.
it is.
I kind of
I
yeah.
do remember it feeling very overwhelming when I was playing it initially.
I would actually recommend if you have the time for it, I would watch those videos that he put out on them.
Okay.
And, you know, if that kind of helps to explain, it might give you that context you need to go in and play the game itself because the game is fantastic. It is a
Yeah,
great, great, great game.
that'd be helpful for you,
Yeah.
Joe. If
And,
I hadn't played Witcher 3, then I'd go that route.
yeah, I mean, honestly, and it brings me shame upon my house and upon my family that I
We all have
say,
those shameful games we haven't played or didn't like. Don't worry.
yeah, that I say that I didn't enjoy The Witcher 3, but I, I'm willing to give it another shot. You know, with Mass Effect, yeah, I guess it's just not for me, but like, I really wanted to like The Witcher 3. I just didn't get sucked into it. And maybe that might be my solution going back and watching Joseph Anderson's
I would watch his videos.
videos.
They helped me understand a lot of what was going on with gameplay, explanations of everything. There's tons of like exposition to explain the lore, to explain what's going on, why these people are relevant. It's great.
Mm,
So I would definitely recommend you do that. Actually, I'm waiting to see when his one for the third game comes out because I really enjoyed the first two.
mm,
And like I said, I'm really hoping that they revisit the first Witcher game and either remaster it and give it quality of life updates to make it feel more modern, or just give it a full remake. I mean, as we know, CD Projekt Red could really use a W right now.
Oh
So
yeah.
returning to The Witcher and maybe updating the first game in the series, I think a lot of people would jump at that. I think that would be very popular to bring to people. So I wouldn't at this point I wouldn't watch those videos and then dive back into 3 and play it again, but one day if they do revisit the first Witcher, I would like to go through the whole trilogy. Yeah, I want to see that play out.
okay, yeah. Oh, and by
Oh,
the way,
definitely.
to answer your question, Mark, I did kind of enjoy the Witcher TV series.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I watched it through twice. Once by myself, and then I recommended it to my girlfriend, and she was like, "All right, I'll watch it with you." And so we watched it together, and
Okay.
she seemed like she enjoyed it for what it's worth. It probably wouldn't be one of those shows that she would pick up and watch on her own, but
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
bec-
Henry Cavill's a good Geralt.
yeah, I really like it. I really like his mannerisms, the way he just goes, oh, fuck, you know, like it's just so good.
Fuck.
Yeah, Henry Cavill's Geralt is basically me every day on the inside.
Nice. Well, the funny part is that like that was always the cool part about Geralt as a character is that like he doesn't do like your normal range of emotions. He goes from basically like slight smirk and happy to slight frown and pissed off. And bad situations are like, okay, here we go.
He's a perfect gruff, grizzled protagonist.
Hmm. Yeah.
He's that cop in that '80s movie that's just 2 days away from retirement.
I'm too
Yep.
damn old for this.
Too old for this griffin hunting.
Oh my god. But no, I mean he's a cool character. Like that's the thing about that particular series. Besides the combat, the characters are really very strong characters. They're rather compelling, and he's a fantastic main character for that series. But I love the depth of it. I like the setting a lot. Um, I don't know how much time I've spent just bumming around in Novigrad, just going and playing Gwent, participating in that Gwent tournament. That's always entertaining. Um, it's just the fact that like a game like that can have the depth enough to have an actual card game that's somewhat enjoyable to play. That I think they actually made a Gwent
They
game,
did a
a separate
standalone.
one, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They did a standalone Gwent game. I did not enjoy Gwent.
You know what it was? I didn't like it too much at first
and,
because of the limited
you
resources.
and I both love trading card games.
This is true, and the thing is, I actually like Gwent. I find that there's a particular strategy that goes about it that is very much the concept of stringing along your opponent to waste their resources. Um,
Hmm.
that I actually really enjoy about it
Yeah, that's part of
because
it. And like, if they're going all in, you could just kind of nosedive and give them the win for that round, so that you
I
can
have
just like
nothing.
have the better round next round. You know.
Exactly. Like it's funny. The way I thought about it when I went back and played the game a second time is not to go on too long of a tangent, was the concept of like how you had told me when I first started playing Magic, and even when I played Yu-Gi-Oh when I was younger, is that most of us when Yu-Gi-Oh first came out thought of your life points as like you have to defend these at all costs, but those who are more experienced players with the game, whether it be Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or anything where you have a resource to
Mhm.
protect, consider it to be another currency by which you can use to win the game rather than something that can never be touched ever.
Yeah, the only thing that matters is your last life point.
That's exactly
Mm-hmm.
right. Yep. So, and the funny part is that when I started thinking that way about playing Gwent in the game, I'm like, oh, okay, the three matches that need to be won. Is it three or is it two?
I think it's three. I think it's a
Uh,
best of three match.
yeah. The fact that you need to win at least two, one of those matches can be thought of as like, okay, I can definitely sacrifice this if it's going to make my next two much better. And
Yeah.
that type of stuff, even in a game that should really have nothing to do with something like that. It's really cool that it has the depth of that to a game to just sit down and enjoy doing that. It kind of it adds a depth to the world that is more than just all right, go around and kill monsters with your silver sword. Also, and if I may add, I wish Breath of the Wild had adopted this that The Witcher 3 does weapon durability right. The fact that yeah, you have weapon durability, fine. You can fix them yourself if I remember correctly, but you can also just pay a blacksmith to fix your weapons up to 100%. And that's it. That's it.
Yeah,
No,
it's weird
no,
that you can't get those weapons fixed in Breath of the Wild, but yeah,
that
most games with that kind of system, you can repair them yourself or pay to get them repaired.
that drives me nuts to no extent. And part of the reason I don't think Breath of the Wild typically does is because of the fact that you can find multiple weapons of a really high caliber, and it led to me basically hoarding weapons and only using ones that were throwaways, and because I thought I'd probably need a more powerful one somewhere down the line. And so therefore it basically made it feel like, oh, I can't be using the ones I really need to use because if I run up against something where I need a more powerful weapon and I don't have one, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I might fall into the same kind of field whenever I end up getting to that game.
I mean, I would definitely recommend Joe. It's definitely worth giving another shot to playing The Witcher, but take a look at Joseph Anderson's videos. I mean, yeah, it'll take about a good 9 to 10 hours of your life to go through, but I think it would help give you the depth of knowledge you would need to enjoy the third game.
No, and that's fair. Also, gentlemen, we have another.
Oh, it's Brian Posehn himself.
We
Yeah,
do have a fourth. There he
Fantastic.
is. Joe, do you
not
want to give an
actually Brian
intro
Posehn.
or? Yeah.
All
What's
right.
this?
What?
Introduce.
Oh, yes. Hello, new friend. What's your name?
My name is Justin.
Just getting off of work. How was your day?
Not too bad. I cannot complain.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
good.
that's good. Yeah, that's a start. Yeah. So we were just talking about some games. So far we were talking about games that we've been wanting to get into but haven't for one reason or another, and popular games that we have played and just for whatever reason they don't quite click with us. So yeah, I don't know. Do you want to like talk about a quick introduction type of games you like or anything like that? Do you want to dive in with any of those topics?
Mm. Broad topics, broad topics. Well, since I'm currently playing it, so I picked up Horizon again,
Ooh,
Horizon Zero Dawn,
yes.
and so it's a good game, but I do find myself to be kind of bored with it. I don't know. Like I can't remember. Actually, I think I put it down for The Witcher 3 when it
Mm.
originally came out because I
Yeah,
was
we've
playing
just
that
been
for a
talking about
while.
Witcher 3 for the past like 20 minutes or so. Yeah.
Yep.
Yay! Can't go wrong with The Witcher 3. Great game. Great
See,
game.
Joe?
Yeah,
But
I know. I really need to give it its fair shake. I honestly do.
Yeah, so it's really funny that you mention Horizon, Justin, because that's something that that I kind of noted here for myself, and I wasn't sure if I know Russ hasn't played it. I'm not sure if you've
I
played
haven't
it,
played it.
Joe.
No.
But I was actually going to reference Horizon Zero Dawn as a game that just didn't click with me. I liked the world that they created and the universe of it, and the main core story was really cool. I thought it was a really fresh idea, and I actually played that game so much. I played it about a year ago at this point. I actually got the platinum trophy for it.
Oh,
I
nice.
played it so much, but it is a game that just doesn't quite click with me, partially because what we talked about last week about open world games, there's a lot of fluff, and it's one of those games where you don't know if something's worth doing or not until you've already wasted your time doing it. So maybe you have a similar experience, Justin.
Yeah, so I mean, I played. So I got up maybe I want to say maybe a half point in the game when I first played it, which you get up to like the city they call Meridian, which I mean, the
Yeah,
world is pretty big,
yeah, it's
um,
really huge
but
map.
Meridians maybe like if you're like just going point to point and just clearing stuff on the map just to clear it, it's maybe like I don't know 60% of the way through the clear, 50%, something like that, and that's where I ended the game the first time. But then I didn't play it for 4 years, and then I just picked it up. And coincidentally, that is where I ended playing it like a couple days ago, and I just since have not got the urge to play it again.
Oh man.
But like, I don't know, like you said, like I like the world, I like the story, like I like the premise. It's just, I, so I mean, we're so bogged down these days with like open world games, right? And it's an
Yeah.
open world game. But when as far as like things to do, I guess in that open world, like there's side quests and
Yeah,
like
a lot of side quests, a lot of collectible based stuff. There's a lot of
yeah, like there's some collectible stuff, but there's not a lot. Um like the campfires that they have in the game are just checkpoints, like you just save at them. Um it's like they have the combat, and like the combat's kind of cool, but outside of the combat, like that's it. Now maybe
Mhm,
for me at least, because I'm just playing it on like story difficulty, mainly because I just have so many games that I want to play that I
mhm.
just want to get through the story, and that's it. But
Yeah,
that
there's
being
something to be
said,
said for playing on easy mode. It's something that I've thought about doing myself just to get through some of these games faster.
right. But in like Horizon's case, like I want to say like the real meat and potatoes of the game, or like what makes it interesting, is fighting all that monsters, or like all the monsters, mechanical monsters. It's almost kind of sort of like a Monster Hunter light in a way. And
Yeah, I
when
can
you
see
just
Yeah.
that.
like
Guess I'm
when,
steering clear.
We were talking about Monster Hunter World earlier,
also
and I
good
know
game.
you're on my side in this one too, Justin, because I know you were recently playing Monster Hunter World. You're a fan.
Monster Hunter World was dope.
Yes.
I
Yeah, I
cannot
really
wait for a
liked it.
sequel. But like when you just like two shot enemies in Horizon, you know, it pretty much just trivializes like one of the main like draws of the game, and then the rest of it's just kind of like eh.
Yeah. My favorite strategy. I think I probably played on normal, which is maybe a step up from story mode. But my strategy was I would use the freeze arrows, or I would freeze the enemies, and then I would use bomb slingshots to do huge damage.
Mm.
Yeah, but yeah, I enjoyed the story though. It was fresh. You know, the core of it was great. You know what I think they really should have done with the game, and actually, it's what I expected to see when I fired up the game for the first time. I think they should have made it have a similar scope to the Tomb Raider reboots, where the environments are kind of open ended, where you can approach things from a certain angle that you want to approach it from,
Right.
but certainly not open world, but still with a potential for extra things to do, and that's kind of what I expected going into it. And it was a shock for me to start the game and see a massive open world map. I was like, wow, this is a lot.
Right. Yeah, it's hard for me to pinpoint why it isn't exactly grasping my attention. I mean, that being said, I'm still excited to see what the the sequel is going to be about, and especially now that they've released the gameplay or well, not I don't know if it was gameplay, but like the no, it was gameplay. Like that trailer for it the other day, but I don't know. It's
Yeah,
one
I
of those
haven't
things where
watched
I
it
thought I
yet,
would
but
absolutely love it, and I don't.
ah, yeah, but the sequel does look beautiful though.
It does.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do you have it? Do you think you'll keep playing it?
Uh, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, probably just to finish the story, but like it's going to be one of those things where I feel like I'm just going to play through it just to play through it, not so much that I
Mm.
want to play through it.
At this point, you're invested and you don't feel like stopping. You just want to keep chugging to the end.
Right. That's pretty much it.
Well, hopefully you can push through the story because I do like the story. Just I would recommend ignoring the side stuff.
Yeah. Some of that's another thing too. Like, the side quests are there, and it's like this in a decent amount of games sometimes, but like anytime I see the side quest, I'm like, I don't even want to. Like, I don't care what your problem is, random NPC. I just want to go on with the main story.
Another
Yeah.
settlement needs your help.
Right.
So,
At
I
least
mean, yeah, I mean, the funny part is that, like, just kind of seeing the overview of it, I'm just kind of curious. Like, the fact that you're fighting, these machines, being that the humans are kind of on a technological disadvantage, do you, do you feel, is it almost kind of similar to, like, playing, like, Shadows of the Colossus, or in terms of, like,
Mm,
how big the machines are, or?
They're not
no,
that big, no.
they're not that big.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I
I
just
mean, some of
took
them
like
get to be like dinosaur sized, and they can kill you easily if you're not careful. But
gotcha. Okay.
yeah, you're not climbing on them too much. Or...
Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, like I'd heard about it and I hadn't really taken a look to see any of what the game was about, but I could definitely understand that like while the premise is cool and the game looks great, if the story kind of falls flat, well, the story falls flat, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So the other thing we were talking about, Justin, is games that we want to get into that we haven't tried yet. Does anything come to mind that you would want to add to the conversation on that front?
Oh,
I
man,
know, I know.
there's a lot.
Yeah, as
Yeah, I say that.
gamers, we always kind of have a big back catalog of games that we
Oh
we
yeah, big
really
backlog.
wanted to we've been meaning to hop into. We just never got around to it.
I
Yeah, and
mean, like
I
the
was gonna say,
first
I
thing.
said before, like I have this app, and for example, I track my wish list on it, games that are on my radar, and right now there's games on it. So when we were talking about this earlier, I approached it from like a series as a whole type of thing. But I'm curious to see what you have. You can approach it from wherever you want.
Well, first thing that comes to mind is, well, A, because of just, how overwhelmingly positive all the reviews are for it. And, B, because my one friend Rob just keeps telling me I need to play it, otherwise he's going to punch me in the face. Um, Never played The Last of Us. Own it,
Oh,
never played it. And Last of Us 2's been out for what, a year, 2 years at this
Close
point.
to a year. Last of Us 2's been out.
Yep, and
Last summer it came out.
just never fired them up. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, I can definitely weigh in on that. The first Last of Us, I loved, and I was late to it. I first played it. I played the PS4 remaster, not the original PS3 version. And yeah, I really really love the game. Definitely, we're talking about a top 10 game. That's one of them. And I thought to myself when they announced the sequel, I thought if this was just as good as the first one, I'd be satisfied. But believe it or not, I rank the second one above the first one. The second one is absolutely fantastic. It does something with the narrative that I've never seen a story anywhere do. It definitely evolves the narrative structure in video games as a whole. I think it's a total, landmark, benchmark game for gaming. Can't be missed if you have the system to play it.
Yeah, I need to get on at some point. I think at this point, which I should probably reevaluate my strategy because, finding a PS5 at this point.
Good luck.
No, oh my God, such a nightmare. But like, I wanted to play them on like PS5, especially Last of Us 2, just to
Mhm.
play it on PS5, really.
Yeah,
But
why not?
I've been kind of trying to save it for that, but I might just play Last of Us 1. It's probably not going to be that much different on PS5 than it is PS4, but play Last of Us 1, and then eventually maybe when I get a PS5 soon, probably not, but we're trying. Then play Last of Us 2.
Yeah, highly recommend both of those games. Joe, have you played any of the Last of Us games?
Uh, no, I haven't. Those were games that I've just been meaning to play, but seeing as I'm not really that big of a PlayStation guy anymore, they haven't been an option for me to play.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
So
Yeah, I was
I've
gonna say, I think it'd be up your alley.
yeah, I've heard nothing but praise for the first one, and a lot of the YouTubers that I kind of follow, the ones that are really, they're critical of a lot of stuff. They really tore Last of Us 2 apart. And
Last of Us 2 got such unfair criticism.
yeah, and so when you said that you really enjoyed it, that really shocked me because I hadn't heard anybody that, really enjoyed it to that extent
Oh,
that they,
yeah. Yes.
I
If
mean,
you're, yeah. hmm
no,
Yeah.
I was
I
just
want to hear what you have to say.
No,
Yeah.
I was just going to say like I feel like if you enjoyed it, absolutely awesome. Cool. I'm willing to give it a chance if it crosses my path, and I'll play through it and then I'll form my own opinion on it. But
Mhm.
what I heard was not good, and it.
Oh
I
no, I
I
understand.
I heard they really shat on Joel's character, and like the sequel made the story of the first one worse as a result.
No, no, absolutely not. I would. You could almost argue with the opposite of that. I think people went into the second game with a certain idea of how things were going to play out. They might have I think went into it expecting something similar to the first game, and there would have been nothing wrong with it if they made something similar to the first game. Luckily, Naughty Dog is one of the brilliant developers out there, and they took it in a totally different direction and they knocked it out of the park. It was a grand slam in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can't stress this enough how much I really enjoyed the first game. Like I said, top 10 game for me for sure. And then Last of Us 2 comes out and finds a way to surpass that. And yeah, there's a lot of controversy about how they handled Joel's character in the second game and the light that it shines in comparison to the first game, and just the kind of message it has to share about your actions in the first game. But it makes the story as a whole better. It definitely The second game builds off of that first one and takes the story into a very necessary place, a very bold, brave place to take the story. And that's why I said it was such a leap for narrative in video games. And definitely, if you have the option to play the Last of Us games, play both of them and go into the second one with an open mind.
All right, fair enough. I mean, yeah, I'm open and willing to play them. Like especially if they come out on Steam, I'll definitely buy up the first one and then eh, play the second one just to play it and see if what was said was really true, or or if it was just like the opinion of people who just didn't particularly like it.
Yeah, I think it got wrapped up in a whole lot of toxicity and people who thought that the game was just about social justice issues or something like that,
Mhm.
and you can't go into it with a close-minded stance like that. You need to let the game take you where it's trying to take you,
Fair enough.
because at first you're gonna resist it and you're gonna feel some of the way that the story goes early on. You're gonna think, what's going on with this? I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this. But you need to have that discomfort,
Yeah,
because as you push through it and get closer through the story, your opinion totally morphs, and you really see what they're trying to do with the game, and it is mind blowing.
yeah, and the way
Well,
you're kind of describing it, Mark, it's almost given me Vietnam flashbacks to when I first played through Metal Gear Solid 2. Like,
Okay.
I hated Raiden to begin with the game, and I just was like, no, give me back Snake. I liked playing as Snake, but then as the story kind of developed, and
Iroquois Pliskin.
yeah, you kind of like get to know Raiden's character and get and learn more about the story and the narrative and like how dark his past was. You can't help but love the guy, especially seeing that entire character arc that he goes through in that game is astounding.
Mhm.
So, yeah, with that in mind, like I'd absolutely give The Last of Us 2 its fair shake. I tend to try to lean a little bit closer to those YouTubers because I do trust their opinions because they they kind of align with more so of my own personal beliefs and like
Mhm.
how like games should be structured, how games should be written, how your money is hard earned, so you should definitely get something really enjoyable out of that experience. And from what it sounds like, Mark, you definitely got what an enjoyable experience out of it. So,
Absolutely. I mean, both games they kind of do make you squirm. They're the kind of games where, like, I've only played each of them through one time, and they're the kind of games where it's like you play it once, and once you have that experience, it's like, oh man, like it'd be tough to relive again. It's like it'd be like watching season 1 of Game of Thrones, knowing what happens at the tail end of the season, and that like
Oh
that
yeah.
big shocking moment. It's some of the things, it's just tough to play through. It really weighs on you. But the second game is, yeah, it's I can't say enough good things about it.
Well, see,
okay.
that's the thing is that the game itself is, I wouldn't say less of a game and more of an experience, but it's an experience from what I've gathered. And even the way you talked about the second game itself, like, yeah, I mean, the story itself, it sounds like it's a good story from what I've seen of it. And there definitely is a large subset of the gaming community that's let's say just in sarcasm, they're famous for being extremely open-minded, right? Um to say the least. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, Gamergate wasn't a thing, was it? Um, the unfortunate part is that there is a large portion of the gaming community that because a story has too many things unfamiliar to what they're used to, or bringing something in that they don't typically bother to think about, will write off a story no matter how good it is, and that's a real shame. So.
Yeah, I definitely understand the people who didn't like where the direction where the second game took the story. I can see where that could definitely put people off, and the kind of light that it shines on the story as a whole. But yeah, like I said, you really just have to stick with it and see where it takes you, because once you realize what they're doing with it, yeah, play the game,
All
play the
right.
fucking game. It's one of the greatest games ever made.
All right. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Fair enough.
10 out
Fair
of 10.
enough.
10 out of 10.
Okay.
Somehow, I still don't have any idea about any of the spoilers for any of these games, even though they've been out after a while.
Yeah,
So
and
this
Last
is
of Us 2, the
fantastic for
script
me.
leaked. Yeah, the script leaked. I know a lot of people, were hearing about the story beats before the game even came out. So you keep avoiding the spoilers. Definitely play both games as soon as you can.
Of course. Well, I mean, I guess that moves us to the third topic we wanted to talk about, which was games we would recommend to each other to play.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have to go first, but I kind of took like a Christmas gift approach to it. I thought about games I would recommend to each of you individually.
Oh,
Oh,
So
God.
nice. I can't
I've done,
wait.
I've done enough gushing. Why don't we start from left to right, or and go with you, Russ? What would you recommend for us?
Oh, shoot. All right. I did a little bit of thinking about like ones that I would recommend to, um, to both you and Joe while we were starting this up, and Justin, I'll have to think about something for you too. But then also ones to recommend. I'm gonna try not to beat a dead horse here in certain circumstances, because otherwise I'm just gonna yell Knights of the Old Republic for about 5 minutes. Um, I will beat
It's
that
on the
dead horse
list.
slightly, but it
It's
is
on the
on the list. I know.
I know
Um,
I need to play both of those games. I want to.
You know what the ironic part is, though? They are good experiences story-wise, but they are very, very different games in terms of how they handle the general story. Like, if you want like a traditional Star Wars experience, play the first one. If you want a much more morally gray philosophical experience, play the second one. That's
Well,
one of the
good. I
reasons.
enjoy both things. I'll play both.
That's the ironic part, because that was one of the reasons that I was kind of hyped to some extent about playing New Vegas, is because Obsidian was the same development company that made Knights of the Old Republic 2, and they made Fallout New Vegas as well. So I thought, that's definitely a good one. But we know my feelings about the two Knights of the Old Republic games, so I'm not going to go much further than that.
Now you've played
Play them.
both of them, right, Joe?
No, I've only played KOTOR 2.
Okay. How about you, Justin? What's your experience? Are you a KOTOR fan?
Yes. Although
Yeah, thank God.
it's been forever and a day since I played them. Unless we're talking about, KOTOR Online, in which case, fuck that game.
What, the Old Republic was it called?
Yeah, it was. I think it was just Knights of the Old Republic Online.
Yeah,
I
it
don't know.
wasn't great.
I played it at launch. They've added a lot of stuff since there. Since then, I haven't played it since then. I will say the story was good. It's just, as an MMO, it's, you know. But
The
I have
first and
played
second
both
games
other
are
games.
great, though. I mean, like, Justin, you played both the first and second ones, right?
Yes, yes. I love when they came out. I loved them to death.
Now, Justin, we were talking about this earlier because as far as games that I want to get into but haven't yet, I brought up Dragon Age, specifically the first Dragon Age, and compared it to what I've seen of the combat in Knights of the Old Republic. What do you have to say about the combat in those games? Do you think it would hold up today? Keep in mind, I do like RPGs. I mentioned earlier that I like tactical RPGs, so I'm fine with a slower paced system. Do I need to give it a better try? What should I be doing different to think about these games in a different light?
Are we talking about KOTOR
Yeah,
or
KOTOR.
Dragon
Yeah,
Age?
Knights of the Old Republic. That combat is what really kind of
Very clunky to some
t-
extent.
Ooh,
turned me off a little bit. Should I? Yeah, how should I go about looking at this?
oh man, just grit your teeth and just roll through it. Yeah,
So are you playing it for the story? Are you saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I 100% played that for the story. I mean, at the time and the age that I was when the games came out, combat really wasn't at the forefront of my mind. I mean, it was different than some of the other games that I was used to, but I wasn't thinking about it too much. If I had to be critical of it now, woo, man, that combat sucked.
He's exactly right, though. I mean, like that is the general downfall that the two KOTOR games do have. And I even mentioned it before to you guys. Part of the reason it's even like that is because a lot of the feats and the general things the game has is kind of based off of the D&D. Like the way it even handles combat is the D20 system. And because you have like so many different attacks, like for melee things like flurry, power attack, critical strike, or even on the range side like rapid shot and the sniper shot and power blast and all those kind of things that are based off of stuff around that. There's too many different things that you could possibly map to certain buttons along with force powers included. But I will say this: there is nothing like being surrounded by a whole entire horde of enemies and clearing a room out with Force Wave or Force Storm. That is a fantastic feeling, like
I
to
would
the
have
point
to be
where,
a Jedi. There's no other choice for me. I'm definitely gonna be a Jedi when I play these games.
well, see, that's the thing is that, like, I'm sorry, go ahead, Justin.
No, I was gonna say I'll play devil's advocate too. There's also nothing like the great feeling of you knowing that you're a badass Jedi being surrounded on all sides, and then watching all your fucking force abilities miss, and then just getting stomped on and having to reload the game 5 times.
We've
Oh,
all been there too. Yeah, because unfortunately, unless you're a really potent force user, certain times against really powerful enemies, your force powers aren't going to do much. They're going to hit a saving roll, or they're going to resist it altogether, and that could be unfortunate too. So the combat itself, yeah, it's not really real time. It's like faux real time where you choose the moves and it handles it for you. Um, but definitely for the story, like in the very first game, and Justin, you could probably talk about this as well, but the very first game to some extent feels like you are playing through what could legitimately be a Star Wars movie. Essentially, it has that feeling to it, even though you're going to multiple different planets. The way it unfolds and the narrative underneath it feels like you're watching a Star Wars movie. And that's the really nice part to it. The second game is very different, and there's been a ton of great videos on YouTube, video essays done on it about the philosophical background behind it, and probably one of the best characters I've ever seen written for video games in Kreia. Um, in the second game, who you meet early on, but controls everything behind the scenes on probably even a higher level than a Palpatine-esque level, and I know that's almost sacrilege saying it that way. But the way she totes the line between good and evil, it's really not. It's whatever suits her particular goals, and it's just like, from a philosophical standpoint, it's really entertaining to watch. But another part that's cool about that game is that, like, you couldn't do this in the first game, but you can help your companions through an influence system that you gain by certain actions or by talking with them. They can become Jedi. Like in the first game, you eventually become a Jedi, and there's like three other Jedi that join your party. What is it? There's Bastila, Jolie Bindo, and Juhani, I think, are the other Jedi that are available to you. So you could take a team of Jedi with you if you want, or you could take a team of, other combat specialists. But in the second game, a large number of the people in your party can become Jedi eventually. And that makes a really strong connection for you and the characters. And that was one of the reasons I enjoyed the game so much, is that, like, okay, well, I can't wait to like have this person who's been with me the whole game become a Jedi and be like the number two.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, so Knights of the Republic. Should we count that as your first recommendation?
Yeah, let's count that as my first recommendation. I do have some ones individually for people based off of something they either need to play because they've been put on their list, or something I think that would be a good experience for them.
Mhm.
Joe, for you,
Yes.
I would definitely recommend playing Age of Empires 2 at some point.
Age of Empires 2. All right. I'll add
Age
it
of
to the
Empires 2.
list.
It's a fantastic game. It is like the granddaddy of all the medieval RTS games, and it's a classic. It's a little ahistoric in certain senses, but it's the one that kind of started all of it. And the game has been around since 1998, but the definitive edition just came out last year, and they're making a fourth one that's coming out, I think, this year, um, which looks really promising. And it's a fantastic game. I can't recommend it enough. It's what started me liking playing the whole medieval RTS genre.
Well,
Cool.
clearly I don't mind the ahistoric RTS games because Rome Total War is
Yeah.
one of my favorites. I love Crusader Kings. So, yeah, I can
Much
definitely
like Civilization that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Again, it seems like it's right up your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so I'll definitely check it out.
Mark, I know there's a game on your list to play that I think I'm going to burst at the seams if you don't play it sometime this decade. You,
Okay.
for the love of God, you need to play Star Fox 64. You need to play it. Oh
I
my
just
God.
bought it a couple months ago.
I know, and you haven't played it yet, and it pains me so greatly.
Yeah, I know it takes like an hour or something to beat something stupid like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, one day we'll get you over. Play it. How about that?
Oh yeah. And Justin, I have a harder time trying to find something for you because I know you probably play way more than I have. So I gotta think about that. And see if
Sorry,
I
buddy.
can. What's this?
I said it's all right, buddy. I have no life. I play way too many games.
Don't we all? Isn't that literally the reason for this podcast?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Yeah, I guess you got a point.
Yep. So I mean, I gotta think about something for you because probably anything I could recommend you've probably already played.
Well, that's
So
another thing that's tough because I was thinking about something that obviously you guys would enjoy, but then I also had to think about what haven't you played yet, and given your systems that you have, what do you have access to play? So it's a definitely interesting one to think about, but maybe you could think as the discussion goes on, and we could loop back to you.
that's what I was thinking about. The only one that came to mind, that I'm not sure if you've ever played. Did you ever play Empire at War? That Star Wars game from back in the mid 2000s.
I have no idea what you're talking about, so no.
Oh, all right. I'm kind of surprised at that. I'm not sure how much you are for RTS games in certain circumstances, but it is a fantastic Star Wars game. That basically has you being like a tactical commander across both space battles and ground battles across the entire galaxy, basically. Um, it's great. It's fantastic.
Oh.
You go ask Enrico about that game. He'll tell you a lot about it. So
I do like a good RTS. So
yeah,
and
definitely
I do like
recommend
Star
it.
Wars. So,
And it's
Yeah.
probably one of the
Could be a good
games that has
recommendation then.
yeah, it probably has one of the most vibrant modding communities for Star Wars games out there because there's been a bunch of fantastic full conversion mods um, that have extended the life of the game well beyond what could have ever been expected from the initial games. So yeah, there we go. I did have one after all.
All right, you did it. You
Yeah,
got there.
and Justin, I can speak on more about that. Like Russ also recommended that I play that, and I want to say I played through most of the introduction, and it was really fun from what I've played, and I've been meaning to hop back into it because I really like those RTS style games. It reminds me a lot of StarCraft to a certain extent because
love
it is.
StarCraft.
Yeah, so you might really enjoy that.
I will say this: there's no better feeling than being in a space battle, leading with one ship until you get up to an enemy fleet, and then proceeding to pause the game, open up your reinforcement tab, and just hyper in like 4-star destroyers and proceed to absolutely obliterate your enemies in front of you. That is
That
a
sounds fantastic.
wonderful, amazing feeling. It definitely helps that like the space combat music half the time is like it pulls from like the one good part of episode 1, which is like the music from when they break the blockade at Naboo.
Mhm.
Oh my god, that music is amazing for that section. I'm sorry, I'm just gushing a little bit about the game, but
Sorry.
it is great. Also, like if you play the Imperials and you use the Executor, like the super class Star Destroyer, when you bring it in, it takes up half the map. It's oh
Sounds
my god,
great.
go play that game.
Should we move to Joe? Do you
Yeah,
want
go
to
Yeah,
ahead,
so Russ, you know the game that I'm gonna tell you to play.
Oh, I know which one this
you
is.
you
Yep.
fucker, you need to play Fallout New Vegas. I've
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Crusader Kings.
I've gifted
We've
you
talked
that.
about both on this stream
Yes,
so far.
I've gifted you that game. I've given you my physical copy for your
I
Xbox.
know, I
You
know.
bought the fucking game on
A
Steam.
physical copy straight from the man's collection. You still haven't played
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Wow.
To my
Fucker.
defense, he did talk about the fact that there's a lot of bugs in the original version. So.
Bugs aside, though, Russ, it's still a fantabulous
I
game
played
that
it
you
way
need to
after
play.
the fact, and I didn't experience a whole lot of bugs. It's not bad.
Okay.
But yes,
Yeah, I know that's on my list.
also Crusader Kings, either 2 or 3. You can't go wrong with either one.
Fair enough.
3 is
This
a
is
little
nothing
bit
I didn't
more.
already know.
3 is a little bit more approachable, as someone who might have never played it before. So
Okay.
if you're gonna pick one of the two, pick CK3.
Okay.
Mark, my
Yes.
friend, I know you're not a big fan of the Lord of the Rings, but you are a fan of the turn-based RPGs. Have you ever played the Third Age, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age?
Did that come out back on like the PS2, Xbox, GameCube gen?
Yes, sir.
No, I have not played it, but you know what? It's funny you mention that because I know you're a big Lord of the Rings guy,
Love it.
and I
Yes.
disappointed you with my opinion of the movies, but I have heard that there are some really cool Lord of the Rings games from that generation. I know there's a hack and slash one that I actually would buy,
Mhm.
and one of them's turn based, right?
Yes.
That's Third
So
Age.
yes. So I think the hack and slash one you're thinking of are like the Two Towers and
Yeah, I
the
think
Return of the King movie tie-in games. But then there
Yeah.
was also the turn-based like Final Fantasy style RPG that came out a little while afterwards. I recently played through that maybe around the beginning of the pandemic, just simply because I needed something to do, and I forgot how great that game was. Like,
Okay.
it basically just takes you through the story of the game. You're basically just like following in the footsteps of the Fellowship, and I can't recommend it enough to you, Mark.
The story
Especially
of the trilogy or just one of the movies?
yes, the trilogy.
Okay.
So I know you're a big fan of those like Final Fantasy style JRPGs, so that one is definitely something you could probably really get into.
Okay.
I even have a copy on PS2 if you're interested in borrowing it, so you don't have to spend the money.
Yeah, true. Well, you know me. I mean, I know Russ can attest to this. I love owning physical games. If I'm gonna play it, I feel like I might as well buy it, even if someone offers to lend it to me. And I'm going to the Too Many Games game swap at the end of the month, so maybe I'll find it there.
All right, fair enough. And Justin, unfortunately, I don't know you well enough to recommend a game to you, so just take Russ's word for it. Empire at War's probably your best bet.
It's all right. I already wrote down the Lord of the Rings one too, because I freaking love Lord of the Rings.
All right,
No,
so
I didn't know that.
Did you play
What?
those two recent games?
I didn't know you were a big Lord of the Rings fan.
Russ, shut up.
It's only a matter of time before that breached this.
It's all right. It's all right. I just got sidetracked. Mark, what did you say?
I asked if you played those two recent ones they made in the recent
Shadow
years,
of
the Shadow.
Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War.
Yo, those games were great.
Yeah, I love the first one. I've probably played through it completely like 2 or 3 times. And I didn't get Shadow of War initially because of the whole microtransactions nonsense that went along with it, the pay to finish the game nonsense that happened with it.
Oh shit! Really?
But yeah, but when they removed all that nonsense, I finally went and bought it when it was on sale, and I played through maybe like a quarter of it and really enjoyed it, but like because it was open world and just really overwhelming, I just never went back to it like I did with Shadow of Mordor. So, but
I
yeah,
did never finish the second one either.
Yeah.
But they were really good. Gave me that it scratched the Lord of the Rings itch.
yes, absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
Cool. Do you want Justin? Let's move on to you. We can skip me for now. I feel like I've done a lot of talking.
So, I don't really have a lot. I didn't do one for each of you guys. The
Yeah, you don't
first,
need to tailor it to people. That's just how I was
All right.
thinking about it.
so first game that came to my mind. I don't know if any of you guys have played this. So, out of like the realm of like mainstream, like really super popular games, has anybody ever heard of Hollow Knight?
I
I've
have.
heard of it.
actually
Yeah, I've
played
never
it.
Isn't
played
it like
though.
a Dark Souls kind of 2D platformer?
Sort of, yeah. So it's a Metroidvania game.
Nice.
And it's the first game that I can think of in a long time that somebody just recommended to me that I've never heard of the game before. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'll try it. And then next thing you know, I'm on like a binge of like, 4 days in, just like sleeping and breathing this game.
That's what happened to me with The
You really
Witcher.
like it.
Oh my god, it was fantastic. And I don't really play Metroidvania games, like hardly ever. I never played the original Metroids or really anything. And I
Don't play
never
the original. Just play Super
I-
Metroid.
I've never played Castlevania either, which a lot of people want to kill me for. I need
alright.
to at some point. But that game was great. Like the music was great, the combat was great, the environments and everything looked fantastic.
Yeah, and it's
and then-
just aesthetically a really pretty looking game too.
It is. Oh my god, it's phenomenal. It plays phenomenal. The story is actually, I think the story is one of my favorite things. Now I kind of like darker, macabre kind of worlds environment, like Majora's Mask or stuff like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good choice.
And essentially, like this game, it's just you're in the world of bugs. Like you're a bug.
so it's down to that level, but it's kind of like macabre. Um, but I don't know,
Yes.
it's fantastic.
Do you see yourself playing more Metroidvanias in the future because of it?
Oh, one like the exploration in the game was fantastic, and I never really played one of those games before, so I didn't know how it's supposed to pan out or anything like that. But you have the environments, but you need like certain abilities to go into like certain areas and stuff like that. And to be honest, I was never really even like a big. I mean, when it was popular and current, like 2D games, like great. But ever since 3D, I'm like, oh, great, 2D game. Why?
um, well, yeah, it's interesting bringing up Hollow Knight. Two games immediately come to mind. I haven't played them, but I think they might have a similar tone or feel. But I know Salt and Sanctuary and Bloodstained. Have you played either of those?
No, I have not even heard of them.
Either have
But
I.
Okay, yeah, well, I know. So, yeah, I think Salt and Sanctuary is a similar type of game. It's 2D, kind of hardcore, punishes you kind of type deal. Um, kind of the same kind of parallels to Dark Souls, as far as I understand. Like I said, I haven't played these games. I haven't even really looked into them too much. But yeah, I mean, you might want to take a look at Salt and Sanctuary, and then Bloodstained. I know is a love letter to old school Castlevania, so you could either play Castlevania or play Bloodstained, which is maybe a slightly more modern take on something like that.
boom, on the list.
All right. Well, Mark, I think it's your turn. Give us our Christmas
Okay.
gifts.
Yeah, yeah. Feel free to jump back in if you have more. It's got the one there, but if you want to jump in with more, I'm always looking to learn about new games. But yeah, so I'll start off with two games. I'll move through them quick because I've actually played neither of these, but I think it's something that all of us should keep on our radars. And they're games that I've been hearing more and more about recent years, and they're definitely worth keeping an eye on. Like I said, I haven't played these games, but they seem like games that we would like, and they're worth mentioning here. And the first one is Alpha Protocol. Have you heard about this one, guys?
Name
I've heard of
sounds
it before.
familiar.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah, so it bills itself as the espionage RPG. It actually says it right on the front of the case as the tagline.
Espionage RPG. Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, and you'll notice also if you're looking at the case, this was made by Obsidian,
Oh, nice.
which
Okay.
is why I think it's
Cool.
something we should think about. It seems like you get to play kind of a James Bond type of spy character. It's an RPG, a lot of intense decision making with time limits, so you're forced to really pick something quickly. You can't deliberate with some of these decisions. But I hear that it's an all around solid game and didn't get enough love when it came out, so it's something for us to keep on our radars.
And we are certainly fans of Obsidian here on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then similar vein of thought, another game to keep on the radar is Jade Empire.
I've heard of that.
Yes,
Same.
and yeah, this is a BioWare game that came out on the original Xbox, and it's an RPG having to deal with it takes place in I think ancient China, and it
Yep.
has a
Looks
lot
that way.
lot to do with martial arts and that type of stuff. I believe it has a real time combat system, but is classic BioWare RPG with that setting and similar dialogue choices and that kind of thing. Again, haven't played it, don't know too much about how it plays, but I know it looks cool and it's one to think about.
Right on.
Okay. So yeah, all right. For you, Russ, I'm gonna say, and I've said it before, and you know it to an extent. You got to try Metal Gear Solid.
I know.
Yes.
I know. I know this one. I think if I remember correctly, you said there's a GameCube one that has like a remastered version of that, and also has two on there as well. Is that correct?
Well, I know there's
Twin
the Twin
Snakes.
Snakes on GameCube. That's a remaster, I believe.
No, it's
First
a
Metal Gear
it's a
Solid?
it's a remake of
Full on remake.
yeah.
Okay, I haven't
Oh,
played
okay.
it,
I mean, I have a
but
PS1, or yeah,
okay. Well,
somewhere.
with the PS1, yeah, you can do even the original game if you want.
Or
But
you
yeah, that's
can
definitely. I think that's one you would enjoy.
you can also get it on GOG there, Russ. I think it's like $10 or something.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I'm sure we've had the conversation before, but yeah, that blend of history with fiction, the historical fiction world, I think you would get a kick out of. Very elaborate storylines. I mean, I've played all the damn games, and
I watched you
there's
play it a good bit
still
too.
yeah, there's still things that I don't have all the details on. But yeah, it's definitely a series that I think you would enjoy.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong
Okay.
with Kojima.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, as far
Unless
as
you're playing Death
storytelling goes.
Stranding.
Oh, you mean you mean Stumble Simulator 2019?
We can save that game for a different day. But
Oh,
I still
yeah,
need to play that.
yeah, they're coming out with that director's cut, so maybe that's the one for you. But
Yeah, I saw that. Maybe I'll pick that up instead.
yeah, Metal Gear Solid for you, Russ. I think that'd be good. And also another one that's more out of left field is actually a game that Julie and I are playing right now. It's called Nino Kuni.
I've heard of that before.
Yeah, so it's the animation is done by Studio Ghibli.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
the same animation studio that does the Miyazaki movies like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, those
Mhm.
things. So the game is gorgeous, and I would actually kind of recommend it to you, perhaps, because it does have a Pokemon kind of element to it, where you start capturing these critters, and they battle for you, and they get they level up, and they get their own moves and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm actually just looking at some pictures of it now, and just looking at the way it's put together, it kind of reminds me of that to some extent. It has the whole like HP and MP system. It
Yes,
looks like. So, I
yes,
mean, I've
and
heard of
things
that.
evolve, like your little critters evolve after enough time. So
Gotcha.
it's I've been enjoying it, and they did put the remaster of the first game on Nintendo Switch. So
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, it's definitely something to look forward to because, like, I know, I've played some like kind of Pokemon clones in their day. And this one almost kind of half reminds me a little bit of like, Digimon World 2, a little bit,
okay,
where they have like an HP and an MP system for attacking. Um, so yeah, that actually looks pretty cool because I've been meaning to, whenever I get a chance to actually get into some games that are kind of like based off of that. So like that one, Yokai Watch is another one I've heard is pretty
okay, I've
good.
heard of that.
And the one that was supposed to be like an absolute like direct kind of take off of Pokemon, but actually good. No, I'm just kidding. Is what was that? Was it Temtem? I think was the name of it. Was a
I've
newer
heard,
one.
yeah, I think that wasn't that an online game, like.
Yeah, it was. It was
Mhm.
basically like somebody taking the idea of like Pokemon should actually do this, and so they did that.
Yeah, but bouncing off of what Justin said, how he mentioned the Shadows games scratch that Lord of the Rings itch.
Hmm.
Uh, Nino Kuni does kind of scratch that Pokemon itch. It gives you those same beats of wanting to capture more and wanting to level them up and seeing what
Anything's got to be better than Sword and Shield at this rate.
yeah, seeing
Yeah.
what each critter is capable of. So yeah, if you want to branch out one day but play something familiar, I recommend it.
Okay.
All right, Joe.
Ooh boy, can't wait.
Now I know you're a big fan of Resident Evil, which we will talk about shortly,
Yes, sir.
and I know you've played Dino Crisis, right?
I have played maybe like 2 hours worth of it. Yes.
Okay, so you're familiar with it.
Mhm.
So, um, here's something though. Have you played Parasite Eve?
No, I have not.
I've heard of that.
All right, all right. I'm glad you haven't. That is my recommendation for you. So this was a Squaresoft game that
Mhm.
came out on the PS1. I'm not sure where else you can get it right now, but yeah, really cool game, and it definitely gives me Resident Evil vibes. It's kind of like if you took Resident Evil from that late 90s era back in the heyday of classic Resident Evil
Mhm.
and combined it with RPG elements, which Squaresoft obviously was known for, and made a game out of that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my recommendation for you. Has kind of a creepy horror kind of ambiance to it, but much like Resident Evil, with at least the classic ones, you're going through a lot of pre-rendered backgrounds.
Yeah.
But kind of like an RPG, you're getting into these random battles when you come into contact with enemies. It's not a very long game. but definitely one to check out.
All right, yeah,
if,
I'll
if it sounds interesting to you.
I'll add it to
Just
my
looking
list.
into it now, it says it was just a little bit of trivia. It says it was Squaresoft's first M-rated game.
Okay,
Ooh.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely one to check
I'll
out.
I'll take a look at it and see how much it costs on Amazon.
Yeah, I don't know if it's how expensive it is now. I know the sequel is pretty expensive. I still need to pick that one up, but yeah, Parasite Eve. That's my recommendation for you.
All right, awesome.
All right, Justin, I'm moving on to you, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, well, I already gave you those two before, which I know next to nothing about, so that starts you off on hopefully the right path. But my recommendation for you, Yakuza. Have you
Heard that
played
game is
Yakuza?
Yakuza.
Have you played it?
No, funny you should recommend it though, because I have a friend named Rob. I don't know if I've ever told you about. He tells me constantly that I need to play Yakuza.
Yes, I feel like you would enjoy it. I think you would really get a kick out of just like the world that they create, the kind of attitude that the game has, the gameplay where you're beating the hell out of dudes with things in the environment, and it toes this interesting line where at times it's over the top and goofy, but it also gets incredibly serious as if it wasn't a game with any comedy whatsoever. So
Just
that's my
beat somebody up
recommendation.
in a convenience store with like everything in the convenience store.
Yeah, and I've only played one game. I'm pretty new to the series myself, and it's one that I hope to. I want to play another game, hopefully this summer, even if I get the chance to. But I've played Yakuza Zero. That's the one that I've played so far, and I really enjoyed that game. I liked you're going down the street, and a couple of Chumbas walk past you, and they give you the wrong look, and they start fighting you, and then you pick up a freaking motorcycle and just hit them over the head with it.
Oh, nice.
I think that's on Game Pass right now in the box. I might even have it installed. I don't know.
See, there
It's
you
the
go.
best place to start. Yakuza Zero.
You can't go wrong beating some Chumas with a motorcycle.
That was my favorite play. If I couldn't get a motorcycle, I would just find a line of bicycles that were parked next to it somewhere and make sure to pick a fight there. So I would just have an arsenal of bicycles to beat people with.
Low key, not gonna lie, best part of Cyberpunk 2077 was the terminology to come out of it.
Yes, I love it. But yeah, I think I think you would get a kick out of it. I'm looking forward to playing more of the games, and it's also a game where there's a lot of stuff to do. Not super open world, more sandboxy, but there's
Right.
a lot of side stuff and mini games you can get lost in that just adds to the game's quirkiness.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's my recommendation for you.
I'll add them higher to the list. I did. I don't know if Joe, have you ever played Dead Space?
No, I haven't. I've heard nothing but good things about it.
That's one I haven't played, but yeah, I have a feeling.
There is a recommendation, especially if you guys like the Resident Evil.
Yeah,
those games.
Oh, it's like horror in space.
Yeah,
Oh,
give Joe the
great.
pitch. Give him the pitch. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard it's basically like they took what Capcom did with Resident Evil 4 and basically just turned up the dial to 15 and made it horrifying.
Yeah, it's pretty much it. Like it'll scare you shitless. In some instances, like the combat's great. It's not like if I had to compare it to a Resident Evil game, I'd say maybe let's compare it to. Well, it's tough to say. I was gonna say Resident Evil Remake, just in the sense that it's like an over-the-shoulder, like third person, but it's like half their games.
Mm.
But like it's mostly centered on combat and like you can upgrade your gear and like weapons and stuff like that. It's a very combat centric survival game.
Okay.
But some of the parts are just like it is gory. Like it just scare you shitless.
Nice.
Like gory. The like the ambiance of like the games in general are just horrifying, and the story's really good. But yeah, really, really good survival horror game. I think outside of Resident Evil, that's the only other survival horror type game that I've played that I've like really, really loved.
All right.
That's good for me to know because, like I was saying earlier, I don't play horror games, but I'm a big fan of Resident Evil, so that's kind of the exception for me because I've been playing them my whole life. But
Right.
hearing that is reassuring.
Yeah, they're really, really fun. Combat is phenomenal. It just so happens to be, terrifying.
Do you feel like the trilogy tails off towards the end? I've heard some negative things about the third one.
Yeah, the third one, unfortunately, not my favorite in the series. One was great. I thought two was a little bit better than one. Three, oh man, they must have been smoking something when they made three. I don't know. Three was
They were smoking
I-
that EA bong.
right. I mean, three, they took the direction of like, so all those games are single player except for three, and then you could do like co-op in three. I don't know if that influenced maybe how they went about it. I don't know.
Mm.
There's a lot of things I didn't like about three. It was
I feel like
still
when you
okay.
I feel like when you take a horror game and add the opportunity for extra players, whether it's real people or AI,
it kills a little bit.
Yeah.
it does.
Because it
yeah,
sucks away from
you get
that
the
like
game.
feeling of isolation and being
Yeah,
you
like,
against
yeah.
all odds. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have only yourself to rely on, type of deal.
there's some things I didn't like about the story beats and like where they took that. I don't know. They feel like they could have done it a little better, but I don't know. Maybe they'll make a Dead Space 4. Maybe. Probably not.
Who knows, man? Hopefully they do for your sake.
Whatever. If they don't, at least I got more Resident Evil games.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of Resident Evil to play out there.
Now that's a transition if I ever heard it.
Yeah.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen of the people that aren't listening, so this is this section in which we will get into full spoilers for Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8 Village, Resident Evil 8 My Village.
Eight Resident Evil villages.
Yes. So
Animal Crossing Village.
yes.
There we go.
If you haven't played through 8 of my Resident Villages, please turn back now. Otherwise, we're going to get into massive spoilers. So there's your spoiler warning. All right. So, gentlemen, Resident 8 Village Evil. Russ, you haven't played it because you're a dope and you don't like Resident Evil. That's okay. We still love you. Mark and Justin, you both have played Resident Evil 8. Mark was the originally why I had purchased Resident Evil 8, and talking with you guys a couple weeks ago at Danton's kind of really like lit the fire under my belly to say, you know what, fucking just turn down the graphical settings on the game and just try and power through it.
Does
And
it still look pretty good with the settings turned down?
it decent enough. I mean,
Okay.
the character models look wonky, but I don't have to turn it down all the way to the point where it looks like I need to wear glasses to take a look at the big titty vampire mommy. But you know, otherwise,
Just a couple cinder blocks on her chest.
yeah,
at that point.
it runs fairly well enough on my potato of a PC. I mean, I think the reason why it wasn't really running all that hot is because I got a 3 gigabyte graphics card, and while the game mainly runs very smoothly throughout most of the game, I've noticed that I take like serious like frame rate dips whenever the game is accounting for a roaming enemy. So like in situations where it was Lady Dimitrescu or her daughters were roaming around the castle, it would drag on so horrendously slow that it was like a slog to get through. But I pushed through it anyway because I knew on the other side of this wonderful egg shell of a game was something great here.
And luckily, the whole like the Castle Domitresque part where you're being pursued by the lady herself and her
It
daughters.
yeah,
It doesn't take
it's
too much time.
relatively short. Yeah. So
Well, before we jump into any further, do you want to give us like a high end? Did you like the game?
okay, so that's kind of a bit of a loaded question. Because
Okay.
had you asked me in the middle of my first playthrough, I would have told you I fucking love the game. It's great, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Gameplay tight. Uh, guns feel like they've got weight behind them. You know, enemy variance is like never gets dull. You know, fast paced action.
Yeah.
Reminded me of Resident Evil 4. I love Resident
Mhm.
Evil 4. It holds a special place in my heart as one of my favorite games of all time. So it was nice to see a lot of the mechanics that they had in that and kind of breathe new life into what was basically just like a game that was sitting on the shelf and collecting dust, you know. So had you asked me that in the middle, yeah, loved it, great. But second playthrough where I went in to kind of like really absorb and like take in the environments, take in this, you know, the story beats and really like focus in on things because you know, now that we know what we know about Mother Miranda being basically all of like the characters that push you along except for the Duke, you know, it left a lot of questions in my mind about why the story took turns the way it did, and it left me questioning why the Duke was even a character in the story to a certain extent, and that might even be like a hot take, because I didn't particularly like the Duke. I know a lot of people adore the Duke. I
I like the
personally,
Duke. Yeah.
I didn't like him, and we can go into further detail exactly why. I have it written down in my notes exactly why I don't like him.
Now let's back up and
Yeah,
stop for a
sure.
moment. You said that Mother Miranda actually made up the four main
Oh
members.
no. Maybe that was me misspeaking. She was she was Mia and she was the old witch lady. So yeah, I'm sorry. That
Oh
was
yeah,
me misspeaking. I didn't mean to intend to say that she was the four.
I was gonna say like, wow, that's that went way over my head.
No. But yeah, we can kind of like talk more about like the overall Mother Miranda's plan as far as how it just doesn't fucking make sense to me. Um, so I have notes that I took throughout my second playthrough, and I just basically kept a notepad open on my on behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
just jotted down notes of things that I liked, things that I didn't like. So the first thing that I have jotted down was Rosemary is referred to as a 6-month-old baby. Her date of birth is listed as 2/8/2020, and there's a photo in the kitchen with the date 2/6/2021, meaning she's already almost 1 year old. If this is a mistake and her birthday's in August, then that makes more sense, but it is an inconsistency between date formats that needs to be fixed to avoid confusion. Also, the date in Ethan's diary throughout the game is February 9th, 2021. Thoughts?
It's just this is the road we're going. Oh man, we're gonna be here for a while.
Well, I mean, well, did you see Rosemary with that Chris Redfield head modded onto her? She's clearly older than 2.
Oh, okay.
She had a full beard.
Yeah, so like I know that's starting things off with a nitpick, but because I really like wanted to like fully like take in like the files of of the game, kind of like really like live the story. What I was looking for was like
Oh yeah, I
consistency.
got the bookworm trophy. I found all those files.
Yeah, so like I was really like looking for consistency within like the world. And so when I saw that jumped out at me. I was like, "Oh, fuck, here we go." You know.
Mm,
So,
yeah, right away.
yeah, right off the bat before you even leave the house, there's one very minor mistake, but it's still a mistake, you know. Justin, what are your thoughts on the game? I know I've been doing a lot of talking as far as this, but what were your initial thoughts of the game?
That's all right. So, well, I'll preface by saying, although I do like the Resident Evil games, I'm more of a casual Resident Evil player in that I haven't even played half of them. I never played one, never played two, never played three, uh, played four, five. I heard six was abysmal, so I never played that.
Good choice.
And then
Mhm.
yeah, by all accounts, a good choice.
Mhm.
Um, and then I played, Village and Biohazard.
Okay.
Um, now, like personally, I love this game. It was fantastic. I burnt this game into the ground. I played it like 5 times already to get all the achievements.
You were
Um,
telling me when last time we were talking, you said you made multiple playthroughs. So you
I
got
made
the
multiple
every
playthroughs.
trophy
It was great.
or
I
every
mean,
achievement, I should say. Mhm.
first initial impression was, and by first initial impression, I mean, so I played the game on like hardcore, or I like started on hardcore, and then I got up to like the first part where all the lichens come. And I
Mhm.
got my ass beat for a grand total of 2 hours. I was like, "Fuck this shit," and then I changed the difficulty back down, and then
Well,
just
yeah, you're
made it
going
to
up
a
against
standard.
these fucking werewolf people, and you have a goddamn Lemmy with a band-aid taped to the
Yeah, I
freaking
know.
handle.
But I was like, maybe I'll be able to get through the hardcore difficulty. And then I was like, oh god, I'm like, is there any way in hell, like on your first playthrough, you're supposed to be able to get through this fucking game? Like, no, probably not. Um, Overall, yeah, I thought the combat was great. Like Joe said, like all the guns have a great weight to them. The story overall is pretty good. I think I almost like shit my pants like when Ethan gets flatlined at the end of it,
Oh,
or
yeah.
quote unquote flatlined, and then they're like, "Oh, you're playing as Chris Redfield." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm playing as
Yes.
Chris." And then all of a sudden, they give you like Chris's guns and shit, and you're just like mowing stuff down. You're like, "Damn, Ethan's a bitch."
Yeah.
But
It's
like
true. It's
the
true.
the story was good. I like the characters, like the villains and stuff. Some of them. Yeah, like first playthrough, absolutely loved it. To follow Joe's, like I still love the game. To follow Joe's point, the second playthrough, or as I went into it in detail again, this is probably just because it's the nature of like the horror part of it, but like I'll call it like Act Two when you go to what's her name's house,
Donna
Benevere.
Beneviento.
Yeah,
Yep.
I fucking hate that section. Only
Oh,
because ultimately on like so first playthrough that section's great,
Oh,
right? It is
yes.
scary as shit.
Incredibly
the baby?
tense.
Right, that baby is terrifying.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. A lot of things are terrifying. You
Mhm.
put the tape in, and I'm like, shit. I just watched The Ring. I'm gonna die in 7 days when they show you the well.
Goddamn. Well, I thought the same exact thing. Yeah.
Right, like it was horrifying. But like second and third playthrough, I'm like, great. I already know what's gonna happen. This is gonna be boring. There's no combat here. It's snooze fest.
Mm.
And then like I don't know, Fish Guy. He's all right. Like
Moreau.
that section, it was okay. It wasn't my favorite. Luckily, that section is short. I think
Mhm.
my favorite sections were the castle
Yeah, Castle Dimitrescu is awesome.
and factory. Can't go wrong with some Heisenberg.
Am I the only one who hears Heisenberg and gets Nicolas Cage vibes?
I don't know. I think of
Uh,
um, I think of a character from Baldur's Gate 3 because he voices a vampire in Baldur's Gate 3. So
Okay.
that's all I think of.
I don't know. I
mean,
just
I think of a physics principle, but that's just me.
I think like when I hear Heisenberg and his delivery, it almost feels like he's overdoing it and he's hamming it up, and I don't know if that was like intended, but he's got like that very like showboaty like ring to his
But he-
voice.
Yeah,
But
I know what you mean.
but like in that scene near the end of the game when you're in the factory and he makes you sit down on the chair in front of the
Yeah.
fucking open hole, by the way, like
Shut your fucking hole.
yeah, shut your fucking hole.
Funny as hell.
Yeah,
I love
like
that. Yeah.
it's almost as if like that's the real Heisenberg that you hear, and he's kind of like just putting on a show when he's over like the loudspeaker trying to talk to Ethan. He's putting on a show for all the other Lycans that are around. Like,
Yeah, it could be like
Right.
the actual Heisenberg is a very desperate person who needs help to kill Miranda so he can be free, and then
mhm.
the personality you see at the start is just like his kind of the mask he wears.
Yeah, I mean, but like the shame of it is I honestly think we didn't get enough of these characters either. We got a
Very
lot of
true.
yeah, we got a lot of Domitresk, we got a lot of Heisenberg, but we didn't get a lot of Beneviento, we didn't get a lot of Moreau, and we certainly didn't get enough of Mother Miranda. Like, uh, I kind of just see Miranda as generic bad guy villain at the end of the game. Like, I keep feeling like Resident Evil Village is trying so hard to hit the story beats of Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 4, but is just copying without truly understanding the context of the situation of 4. Kind of
I
like
could see that, but wouldn't you say that Mother Miranda plays a similar role and has a similar impact of Sadler from RE4?
n- no. I'd say Sadler's a little bit more involved in the story than Miranda was, because I mean, all we really know about Miranda is she's a fucking crazy lady who wants her baby back. Sadler, he had like a plan in place. The reason why he had Krauser kidnap Ashley was so that he could implant her with the Plagas, hold her until it was time for the Plagas to, be mature enough so that way he could control her, and then let her go. It just so happened that Leon came along to kind of foil that plan and get the Plagas out of her before it was really truly ready. So there's a little bit more characterization with Sadler in 4 than there is with Miranda in Village.
Okay, well, yeah, I haven't. It's been, oh man, probably close to maybe 6 years since my last RE4
Mhm.
playthrough. So
And
that could be.
yeah,
could
and
be
I
close
can
enough.
confidently say this because I replayed 4 within a year. Like I'd say
Okay,
it was probably within like 4 to 6 months. I've
okay.
replayed 4. So yeah. And as far as Bianaviento and Moreau, Donna, you get absolutely nothing about her. We don't really know anything about her. You get a little bit of like environmental storytelling with the death of who I'm assuming her daughter is, because that's her grave outside of her area that you put the slab in after
Yeah,
you
you
fight the
see, it's
mini
the
boss.
D Beneviento.
Yeah, so it's like Claudia Benevento or something like that. So we're just assuming it's like her daughter or maybe her mother, and I'm more inclined to believe it was like her daughter that like died when she was not necessarily young, but like as like an old, like a teenager or something like that, and or like a young adult, because that's why I
Mhm.
think she kind of like goes around with the um the bride puppet as like kind of like a little bit of a surrogate as a daughter, because she kind of like characterizes her as a daughter. She tells Ethan, "Oh, I would make so much better, daughter than Rose." But other than that, she's just fucking generic crazy person. You know,
Now, didn't you tell me that the Beneviento section is your favorite game for your first playthrough?
yes, first playthrough, I kind of wanted to jump in while Justin was talking, but I kind of like, was holding it back because like he's right. In the very first playthrough, it's very tense. Like I walked
Yeah.
through that area, literally. I walked through it. I didn't press the shift key at all to run. I was checking corners. I was going around. The tension was building, very much so like in 7, where you get into that section where you're collecting the body parts for the serum or whatever, and you get to that section where it's that hallway that's dark, and you're like, the tension's building, and nothing
Mhm.
jumps out at you until you leave. I was
Worst
getting
part.
yeah. I but on repeated playthroughs, yeah, like all that tension's gone. It's
Yeah.
It's one of those that speedrunners probably speed through as quick as possible because there's really very little variance with where the puzzles go. So
Yeah. And,
yeah, it's really weak as far as I'm
Some
concerned.
more of it would have been, at least for this is just like on a repeated playthrough kind of type deal. Like I feel like a little bit more of that section would have been great, especially if maybe some of the things were randomized. Like, I don't know, maybe if they just had one or two other things that could kill you, or like, baby pops out of a different corner.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they had more corridors down there,
Yeah,
that would probably add a lot more tension on
make
repeated
it
playthroughs.
more than just one route to the elevator.
Right.
You know what I mean? I could understand like having one route to the well that you climb down, but like you're saying, have more corridors to kind of like try and dip around, the screaming fetus. Like a full disclosure, my first playthrough, when I saw that baby like round the corner giggling, I couldn't contain myself. I couldn't help but laugh because it was just so funny. Like I know it was supposed to be terrifying, but it was fucking hilarious. I couldn't help but laugh. Yeah, so
Yeah.
first
I didn't
playthrough.
have that first impression. My first impression was, oh shit, I'm going the other way now.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
very
I didn't.
very weak on subsequent
well,
playthroughs.
maybe before we jump back more into your bullet points, I could share my general feelings for the game.
Mhm.
And I think I'm more leaning towards Justin's camp, and I love the game, and I think it's great. I've finished it twice. The first time I played it on the standard difficulty, and then the second time I did Village of Shadows. And with that one, I also decided to. I mentioned this to you, Joe.
Mhm.
That was also the playthrough that I decided to get the "Don't Trust That Snake Oil" trophy, so I could only use 4 healing items.
Yeah.
Oh
So
God.
You
yeah,
masochist.
I saved those for the end, and I needed them. But yeah, I love the game. It obviously takes me right back to Resident Evil 4. Like Justin said with the villains, yeah, maybe they didn't all get as much face time. Maybe the game could have been stretched out to be a little bit longer, kind of like how like Resident Evil 4 was a little bit longer
Mhm.
than Resident Evil 8. But I liked those quirky, just weird characters, that you kind of come to expect from Resident Evil games. And I feel like that's been missing from Resident Evil ever since uh, RE4.
Yeah.
You get this gallery of just bizarre characters. They all have their own thing, and they have their own areas associated with them. Also, like you, Justin, my favorite part of the game was Castle Domitresque. I thought it was a perfect blend of old school Resident Evil with because you're in the mansion pretty much. It reminded me of the mansion from the original game.
A lot of areas in there. A lot of like, locks and, puzzles and shit. It was
Yeah,
great.
it reminded me of classic Resident Evil, which I grew up with. But then you're also playing this game, which is more like 4 and more action paced. So
Mhm.
you get some of that in there too, which is it's a nice blending of like the RE4 style Resident Evil and the classic stuff.
Mhm.
So I liked all that, and the guns were cool. A quick aside about the guns, with playing on PS5 with the DualSense controller, it's interesting because each gun has a different trigger feel. So like the shotgun, um, it actually the controller gives a little bit of tension when you're aiming
Oh,
with it
interesting.
to symbolize a heavier weapon that you're pointing at
Mm.
something, and then the right trigger that you use to fire, it actually, like, it has tension at first, but then the tension gives way when you pull the trigger, almost like a real gun. So that was
That's really
cool that they
cool.
did that with the guns, yeah, and that those controller features. But overall, yeah, like I said, I liked the Duke. He reminded me of obviously from RE4. With I feel like he has more personality than that merchant, so I liked his inclusion there.
Yeah,
That fat bastard.
when we get to my bullet point about the Duke, I'll go into full detail, but I think he's too involved in the story.
He's suspicious. What is he doing there? Why does nobody care? And why does he want all your crap?
Yeah.
Yeah, and why is he buying these crystallized versions of all these dead characters? What does he say when you sell him Lady Domitresque's crystal? It's something
Lady
like,
Domitresque, that waistline.
yes,
Yes.
Yeah, he's fucking creepy about it.
that cracks me up, man. I wonder if they knew like how hyped up Lady Domitresque's character would be when they were writing that line.
They
for
had
him,
to have known.
They're just in it for the memes.
But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's the best original RE title that they've made since 4, and I think it's a good return to form. Things I didn't like were when you get to the part where you're collecting each of the 4 pieces of rose. I felt like that was, like I mentioned to you, Joe. It feels kind of like grocery shopping, and it gives you an idea of how long the game is going to last.
Yep.
You kind of figure once you have rose, you're pretty close to the end.
Yeah.
I wish they would have added more mystery to that and made it feel a little bit more organic.
Yep. Yeah, and overall, as far as like collecting the pieces of rose, like it's heavily implied that she's been chopped up and she's actually in those cylinders, but there's no really like there's no explanation as to the mechanics of how Rose actually gets fixed inside of the Megamycete. It has me questioning so much about exactly how the game is working and how the story is working.
I would imagine that has something to do with, her being the child of Ethan and Mia and have regenerative capabilities thanks to the Mutamycete. So that's how she was able to kind of reform herself like that. That's kind of the part of the power they were alluding to.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I'll go on to talking about how exactly how fucked up Ethan gets in this game. But one thing that I want to highlight that I really liked and I didn't realize was an achievement. But some of Rose's toys in the bedroom, they have actual physics and you can kick them and move them. I really like that. I like little tiny touches in games like that, and it just goes to show that I didn't even really realize that there was an achievement that you could, like, if you move one of her toys to a certain point in the house, like, you get an achievement. I just thought it was just the developers going, oh, here's a nice little touch. Here's actual interactable, scenery for you.
Yeah, you can kick that ball into the study.
Yeah, so, just going down the list, it's really dumb that Chris doesn't tell Ethan why he killed Mia. It's also really dumb that Chris doesn't explain why he's taking Ethan and Rose after they were placed in the house by the BSAA. And I have a quote here directly from the end of the game. Why didn't you tell me right away? Ethan says that, and Chris responds, because I knew you'd want to be involved. And all I wrote underneath that was, look where we are now, Chris. Look where we are now.
Yeah, I see that. That's like a classic example of, when the writing is set up in a way and, with basic human communication, they could have resolved an issue there. At the very beginning of the game, Chris could have just told him, and he admits that he should have told him, but he doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Then you wouldn't have all that suspense.
it's just retarded.
Now that you mention it, like, now that I'm actually, because I'll be honest, like, when I played the game, like, at least in my mind, I've always thought, like, Resident Evil games in general, like, storyline is kind of like campy as shit.
Yeah, it kind of takes a back seat. You have to definitely
right, like, you have to switch off to a degree, but some of the like, they make sense on the whole. Like, now that I'm kind of thinking about it a lot, there's a lot of things in Village that just don't make fucking sense. Like,
Mhm.
why didn't she just take Mia? She needs the kid so bad. She was under disguise. Wait till Ethan goes to sleep and then just kidnap the kid.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why? And then what the hell is the point of splitting her into these like 4 different things? I don't understand that. Why not just just do your little ritual crap? I mean, I think I don't know if I read this or if it was something in the game files, but something about like killing off the 4 lords or whatever, like awakens the Mega Mycete or something like that. And maybe like that's the
I mean,
reason
she does
like
a lot
you're
of
left
shit
to
talking
go.
in that last boss fight, and she mentioned something about killing off her those
Right.
4 characters and how that played into
But
her hand.
but why not her just kill them herself? I
Yeah.
mean, she probably has the power to do so. Why not just do it? I don't know. There's a lot of things that just don't make sense, like, or just maybe have to be explained in a future game. Like, I don't understand. Like, even her death, or not even her death, but like when she brings up Rose, and it's obviously not her kid. She's like, "Oh, my power is leaving me." Like, what? Why? Why is your power leaving you? You've been alive for like 100 years and nothing happened except you pulled a kid out of some muck. Like, I don't understand. Why? Why is Ethan, who's been alive for like 2 years as like some moldy being, suddenly like, "Up, that one fight was the one, and now I'm just gonna turn to dust"? Like,
Moldy boy.
right, like why do mold people have a shelf life? Maybe, I don't
He
know.
was
There's a lot
exposed
of
to too
things,
much sunlight.
right? And
I
then
yeah.
this isn't plot ruining, but I did think it was kind of funny. Like, even his own squad is giving Chris shit for not telling
You should have told him,
Ethan.
Chris.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the moment he goes to the chopper with Rose, and Mia's like, where's Ethan? He's like, "Sit down and shut up, Mia. We're leaving." Like, just tell him. Ethan stayed behind. He's sacrificing himself, whatever. And even after the explosion, she's like, "Yo, where's Ethan?" He's like, "I told you to sit down."
They just have to make Chris cryptic as all hell.
Like, Chris, have you learned nothing? Like, have you learned nothing?
He's an edgy fuck, and that's all he cares about.
Right.
I
Completely unrelated though, but I do like Chris's redesign personally. I think it looks pretty dope.
Yeah, I do like Chris's vibes in
Yeah.
this one, but I think that another thing that misses the mark for me is definitely Ethan. I uh, I think he's a dildo. I don't
Yeah.
I don't really like
Aw.
I don't really like Ethan's character. I think it's dumb that they made him faceless. Like, when have we ever had that in a
We had
do
with
they
Resident
want
Evil 7, people did dig around in like the game files, and there is actually like a rendered face for Ethan, but we never see it.
It's
you
not
never see
real.
you never see his face, and I know you can like break the camera and look at cutscenes and actually see Ethan's face, but just give
It looks
us
dumb as shit.
an actual face, make him an actual character.
Yeah.
The only explanation I could have for that is that they want the player to feel more like the character. The character in the game is faceless, therefore
Yeah,
the
he's just
player
a
can
vessel for the
identify.
character to experience this roller coaster we're on. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
but
don't.
that's really on the nose, though.
I never got that feeling playing 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
I
His
never resonated with Ethan.
I resonated to a degree because I'll say his dialogue is kind of like out of the ordinary in the sense that, like, from a you and me perspective, like all this crazy shit happens, zombies, whatever. And usually throughout the story, he's just like, "What the fuck is
Yeah, he's
going
like, "What is
on?"
this? What's that? Oh my god,
Right,
what the fuck?"
right.
Yeah,
And that
that's true.
would pretty much be a random person's like, response to all this. I am a
That
little
would be me. I
disappointed.
mean, yeah.
I am a little disappointed though when he does go to the village. He doesn't immediately go, "Really? Are we doing this shit again? Again?"
I mean, like, if you dropped me in Castle Domitresque, I'd be like, "What the fuck? Is that a big titty vampire over
Yeah,
going on?
it'd be like, this is so ridiculous.
And then my hands would have hooks through them in no time, and I'd be trouted. But that's yeah.
Right.
But yeah. So I don't like Ethan. I will say though, that twist that they gave us at the end of 8, how pretty much Ethan died in 7 and has survived all this punishment was because he had the mold in him. I thought that was really cool.
That was a good explanation. I did like that. There's
It
no way
definitely-
you're just pouring the juice on yourself. You're like, oh, sweet, magical healing juice.
Yeah,
Let me
the
just reattach
the
that
Jesus
Just put some
juice.
Capri Sun on this.
Capri Sun.
Yeah, the Jesus. I know I have this written down here somewhere, but the Jesus juice heals all wounds except for when it doesn't.
The Jesus juice.
Yeah, can't get his fingers back, but he can reattach a hand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if he could have got his fingers out of that lichen's mouth, then he could have reattached them with the juice.
Mm.
Those fingers are liking shit by now.
I liken them to shit.
I I did like the foreshadowing they had in that stuff that like just completely went over my head as I'm playing the game. Like when Miranda says your blood is stale, and even when she chops off like your hand, you can view the hand in the inventory and like look inside like your wrist and stuff, and you just look moldy as shit like on the inside. And I didn't even bother to inspect my hand because I was too busy trying to reattach it and get away from her.
Yeah,
But
I never looked at it in the inventory either.
yeah, I like some of the like dialogue stuff in there. Like the story, I feel on the whole is okay. There's definitely a lot of like plot holes that I'm just like, whoa. Okay, you just got to go with it, I guess.
Yeah, I wish they just would have made a better effort to give us a new established character in the series.
Right.
I'm fine with a new character. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't always have to be Jill and Chris and Leon and Claire every game. I'm fine with a new character, but give us someone worthwhile and on par with those classics.
Someone we can get attached to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like some of the backstory, at least in the lore too, like how Oswald E. Spencer was like one of her students or something like that.
I think they might have been lovers, is the impression I got.
Possibly.
Might have been
I
column
know
A,
it is.
column B.
I think they were colleagues turned lovers, but yeah, that was interesting. I like that.
Yeah, especially when I think one of the like coolest moments for me, like as a lore kind of thing in Resident Evil, is like I think when you first after you go through the Mother Miranda Castle scenario, and then you go into that room where that old lady is, and you look to the wall, I think it is to your right, and you see like there's like the 4 house sigils or whatever, and then there's the umbrella logo, and I'm just looking at it, I'm like, what the fuck is that doing there? Like, why is that there?
Yeah.
How does this make sense?
I basically
Umbrella
said
wasn't
that.
around.
I basically said that and went, "What the fuck? Why is
Yeah,
that
I'm
there?"
I was completely invested in wanting to know what the hell exactly is going on.
Yeah, and
Then-
that big chalice too that you
Right.
when you complete it and use it to unlock the factory that has the umbrella logo on it too.
Yeah. I was
Well, I mean,
thinking, like,
as you
if
know,
Miranda
you always
did
got to
that.
tie it back into the main series. So
Yeah. It was a good tie-in, though. I thought it was a good tie-in. It has its moments, at least story-wise, lore-wise too. I still don't know how the fuck the mold works, though. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. In some aspects,
it just does what it needs to do in the moment as the story demands it. It's
the Todd Howard effect. It just works.
Well, all right. You don't need to like shit on the game that bad, Russ.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So yeah,
How does the mold work? It just works.
At least the game didn't have any freaking bugs when I played it. I will say that it was a
Fair
smooth
point.
experience from beginning to end.
Yeah, at least for us. Maybe not Joe so much.
yeah,
I'm
and
sorry, Joe.
it's all right. Not a big deal. Just going down the list of gripes and nitpicks. The opening of the game after you get picked up by the transport truck and it crashes. I really spent a good 10 minutes just inspecting that starting area, and I'm not a person who inspects accidents all that often, but I'm someone who has a basic understanding of like physics in the real world. And so I said, there's no clear way to determine exactly how the transport truck crashed into the start location. Sure, there's a skid mark to show where the truck landed and how far it slid. The area is surrounded by cliffs when checked on the local map. And these are pretty fucking steep cliffs, too. It's just like a crevice with snow. So I
Where's
said,
the road?
yeah, so I said, with that in mind, the truck should have slid more than it did if it fell from that height. And where is the road? Exactly, yeah.
It was just picked up by Mother Miranda for like no reason,
Mm.
and then just like dropped in a section of the world.
So I'm getting the sense that anything that doesn't make sense that we can't explain, we're just gonna say Mother Miranda did it.
Just hand wave it.
Yep.
Next point. Remember the part where you go into the first house and then you hear all the noise and then the shelf gets knocked over. There's blood all over the floor, so Ethan's got to crawl underneath the bookshelf. So I said, if Ethan has blood all over his hand when he crawls under the knocked over shelf, then why is there a bloody handprint on the box when he pushes it away?
0 out of 10 game.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Immersion broken.
yeah, so like when I said I went through this game with a fine-tooth comb to kind of like check for consistencies within the world, I really honestly did. Another thing that really bothered
Mother
me,
Miranda
even
cleaned the bloody handprint.
yeah, so like, but something here that bothered me even on my first playthrough. I wrote, the game goes from pitch darkness to daytime unrealistically quickly. There should have been more than a transition in the light in the sky as Ethan left the house. It seems it went from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. just like snap. And you can assume that it was probably sometime around 7 p.m. when Ethan put Rose down to bed, but there is no way to truly be sure of the exact time, and we don't know how long Ethan was unconscious. It needs to be more fleshed out in that section. The game takes place on February in the Northern Hemisphere. Sunrise occurs, and I looked this up while I was taking these notes. Sunrise occurs at around 6:45 during the early part of February. Assuming the beginning of the game takes place at 7 a.m. because the church bell is ringing, likely to signify the change in hour, time moves too quickly, my friends. Nitpick, yes.
I did think of one more nitpick.
Okay.
This is probably the most glaring for me because my brain was completely turned off, like story-wise, for most of this. But I do distinctly remember before the Heisenberg fight, when you get into the tank, that you're told that it's like a metal polymer carbonate tank
Yep.
that he cannot manipulate.
And he still does anyway.
What does he do mid-fight? He lifts it right up into the air. I'm like, why didn't you start with that? I am so confused. How is this happening?
I can't remember. At that part, does he surround you with metal chunks first and then throw you into the air? I can't remember. Because he just has an attack where he does that, right? He just like pelts you with a bunch of metal, and covers you with it.
Once he gets to like a certain low health mark, he he gets the lightning and like a bunch of cogs and random metal go up in the air with you.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you're not made out of metal. I don't know. Maybe he's creating a twister. Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe I just fixed the plot hole. Maybe he's like swirling all that metal around so fast that it's actually wind that is sucking all that stuff up.
So he doesn't actually have control over metal. He has control over wind.
Wind. He's wind energy.
I think he has the control over the metal.
Maybe there was just so much in the air that it was affecting the wind.
Yeah, I think he just maybe generated such a huge force that he created tornado-like winds.
That's the only thing that I could currently think of that explains why that tank went up in the air. So, okay, maybe I'll let that one slide. All right.
Next point. Next point. Outhouses are locked before the game wants you to be able to open them for ... reasons. I know.
Yeah.
Dumb nitpick.
Well,
but
maybe with that one, the doors, because as you know, people expect these lichens to come and they were hiding. But then maybe once the lichens show up and massacre the village and everyone gets killed, they must be busting down doors and going through these houses to kill everybody. So
Mm.
once they attack, I would imagine they would bust down doors, and that's why they aren't locked anymore, because the lichens move through the area.
I don't know.
Maybe some people ran out
Yeah, too.
Mm.
liking food.
I don't know.
I like when you go to like what is it, Louisa's house, and you're with that chick, and for like 5 minutes you think she might be Ethan's new love interest, or and then she just plummets into the fire.
Yep, we'll talk
Peace.
about that shortly.
Yeah, Mark, did you like that? Did you liken that?
All right, next point. Old guy doesn't blow off Ethan's head for no reason and opts to shoot the door frame instead. He shoots because he thinks Ethan might be a werewolf, but he has no reason to fire a warning shot because a werewolf wouldn't be deterred by a warning shot. This is dumb and makes no sense.
Well, was it really a warning shot? Because you pull back that curtain, and then that's when he shoots. I imagine that he's startled and he tries to shoot at you but misses. That's
Right, but
yeah.
wouldn't you reasonably assume that someone who is standing at a door frame like that would be aiming center mass, because anything that's standing in front of a door frame like that would kind of be like, even like with the werewolves, they'd be standing right in front of the door frame. Even like the mechanics in the game show you that's how they behave.
Yeah, well, old man's got a poor shot. That's why he was zeroed.
He's old. He's got poor eyesight. Probably has dementia.
Well, wait a minute. This is a first-person game, and Ethan is a moldy boy. So for all we know, that shot went right through his gut, and Ethan had a big hole there, and it just regenerated.
No, I paid really close attention to exactly where the shot was. It was directly at the door frame.
Well, yeah, he sucks at shooting. That's why he didn't make it.
Yeah, he tried. He didn't make it very far.
Okay, next point. Why does the werewolf pull Ethan through the floor but then disappear and not continue to attack him, only to be waiting a little further down the crawl space to then eat Ethan's fingers? If this is done purely for shock value, it's a poor value and adds absolutely nothing to the story. It further should hinder Ethan because he is essentially missing 2 fingers, but it doesn't seem to hinder him at all.
Yeah, yeah, with all the lichen stuff like that, I mean, you got me there, man. There are so many opportunities when they could have just swarmed the guy, and they just kind of backed off.
Yeah. There's absolutely no movement or any sign of there being any enemies, but suddenly a werewolf jumps out and bites Ethan's fingers off. Also, if Ethan is just mold, why didn't his fingers grow back? Told you we'd be circling back to that one. Why don't his fingers grow back?
That confused me too, yeah. Or why didn't he staple them back on like he stapled his hand in 7?
Yeah, I mean, like, body parts that Jack would lose would grow back over time, yes, but they would still come back. There would be a sign of them growing back. I know, granted, Ethan has his fingers wrapped up in bandages, but still, there should be some explanation for this, and there's not.
That would have been a nice addition to the twist at the end, if like the whole game his missing fingers are bandaged, and then at the end you take off the bandages to see that
his
he has
fingers
some
are
little
back.
baby fingers there growing back, Deadpool style.
Yeah. Well, not even necessarily Deadpool style. It could just be like they're fully grown back too, you know? It doesn't even need to be goofy like that.
The only thing I can make up is maybe he's just near death. Like maybe the whole I mean, he died at the end of the thing after the game after going through that ordeal. I don't know. Maybe he just has a shelf life and he just can't regenerate anymore. I mean, if he has that, Jesus juice and he has a limb, maybe he can reattach it, or maybe just regrow them. But that's just me making shit up out of thin air.
Yeah. All right. We're still on the crawl space.
Joe, I'm a little worried because We've been at this conversation for like at least 20 minutes talking about your bullet points. And we're still within like the first half hour of the game.
I'm
Yeah.
starting to think that maybe we might be best served holding off the last
No,
large
power
majority for a while.
through. There's clearly
Power
two
through, we're
werewolves
gonna
in.
be here till 12 o'clock at this rate.
All right, Russ, you can leave. There's clearly two
Oh,
werewolves
Jesus.
in the crawl space, but only one
Joey's
comes
showing
out
Russ the-
to attack Ethan. Furthermore, no more werewolves are drawn into Ethan's gunfire. Why? It drew their attention when the old dude shot his gun. Why not now?
By the way, he said he had 150 of these.
No, I said I have 150 lines worth. There's spaces in between each bullet point.
Good lord.
All right, where does the werewolf throw Ethan from? There's no debris and there's no holes. On further inspection, the hole that Ethan was pulled through seems to have disappeared too. What the fuck? Why? So if you go back into the house, there's no holes. There should be holes. There's no holes.
Okay.
What causes the blood squirt through the floor in the barn? There's a ton of blood all over the floor, and there's crows dotted about. But unless a crow spontaneously juiced itself, something should have been there to cause it to happen, and there's nothing that happens. It just squeezes through. I'll rapid fire these if you guys want to like wrap up. Why do the werewolves stop attacking the barn? Why do they just sit there on the roof watching Ethan? One of them actively backs away for no reason. In fact, once the second one sees you, he backs away too. Why are the enemies so inconsistent about when they attack? I don't like this set
I did
piece.
notice there are multiple parts in the game when you'll see the lichens just perched on top of buildings, chilling out, waiting for you to make your move. I don't know. Maybe that's just their behavior. They want to see what you do before they swarm you.
Yeah, well, if you shoot them, they'll immediately jump down. But then if you don't, they jump down and attack Ethan as he approaches the door to the house that they were standing on.
They
Next...
like sprawling vistas.
Next one. Ethan really gets fucked up in the cutscene with the big dude with the hammer and the arrow in the leg. Massively fucked up. Werewolves on horses, but they're never seen riding horses ever again. Who wrote this? It might have just been a reference to Planet of the Apes, but who knows? So still talking about that opening scene. Ethan should be dead here. Why don't they kill him? There's no reason for them not to. There's no reason for them at all to leave at the sound of the church bell. This is a clear imitation from the opening of Resident Evil 4, but it is pure mimicry with none of the substance. They were clearly trying to evoke that scene from RE4, but with no real reason for it to happen that way. Very contrived and very forced for no reason. It is dumb. This game tries to pull imagery from Resident Evil 4. Feels like this game is trying to be a soft remake of Resident Evil 4. The arrow was hella deep in Ethan's leg. It clearly went through. It would have done less damage to Ethan for him to break the arrow in half and then pull it out. That way the arrowhead doesn't fuck up his leg even further. Also, Ethan just spawns bandages for his hand. He had most of his ring finger left, but now it's nowhere to be seen once the hand is covered in bandages. My first full playthrough, I straight up forgot he still had most of his ring finger. If Miranda wanted Ethan dead, why didn't she just kill him in the beginning? It would have saved everyone a lot more trouble. On my first playthrough, I saw that a tombstone was readable, so I thought all of them were. I just assumed they were. I am disappointed that it was only Eva's that was readable. The rest can't be interacted with in any way. Why is it that the only plot-relevant tombstone is interactable? Why would Ethan know to read that one and not the rest? How does the lycanthropy thing work? Elena's father was cut by one of them, and he turned? The game later explains that the lichens come from villagers who were exposed to the Kadu, but their transformations were implied to happen almost immediately, with question mark. Why did Elena's father just turn out of nowhere? Lycanthropy is really inconsistent in this game. Louisa opens the door because she recognizes Elena's voice, but it doesn't open for Elena's father. He should have had a familiar voice. Elena implies that Louisa isn't opening the door because Ethan doesn't have a familiar voice. What the fuck? Also, some asshole with a shotgun opens the door instead of Louisa. He's concerned with all of the shouting, drawing the monsters. But when his shooting Elena, her father, and Ethan also draw the monsters. It's already been established that gunfire can draw their attention, except for when it doesn't. So, I don't know. Really inconsistent. And then the drunk guy on the inside being all edgy saying everyone's dying. I wrote, yeah, buddy, I remember my first beer too.
Good note.
Mm-hmm. And then I said, wait, so one day the monsters just attacked? Come back to this point, I'm confused. Didn't Miranda know how to make werewolves for a really long time? Why is this all happening now all of a sudden? And then I said, yeah, Elena's dad just turns all of a sudden with no indication that there's anything wrong. Is that how these werewolves work? Also, what happened to the drunk guy? We never see him die. Also, what about the dickhead with the shotgun? Oh, he was outside this whole time. He was killed by Miranda. Never mind. Then, on his way climbing out of the attic, Ethan slams his fist in anger, but it's his injured hand, and he doesn't give any indication that it hurt when he did that. Another consistency thing. Heisenberg pops out of the corner out of nowhere for no reason. Why not have him come around the corner instead? That would make too much sense, I suppose. Ethan gets fucked up by a piece of metal, and it's never addressed. Remember when he gets like fully encased in that metal? The first is like a big metal pole that impales him, but it's never addressed, and in fact, it's completely forgotten in the next scene. Go back and watch. All right, here is where I talk about the Duke. I don't like the Duke directly affects the narrative. Why is it that somebody who is actively working against the Four Lords have free access to the village? It makes no goddamn sense. Now, my point with the Duke here is that it kind of made sense with the merchant in Resident Evil 4 because he was just a ganado who just happened to be selling guns. It didn't matter who he was selling it to. Whereas the Duke is actively making deals with Dimitrescu. There's records of that, but he's also actively telling Ethan how to fight them, how to get the pieces of Rose back. He's selling. He's actively participating in the narrative, and he's also like transporting Ethan to the final boss fight. I don't like that.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with those things. I think he's just um, playing both sides. You know, I think you can kind of surmise that he's interested in helping himself, preserving his own interests.
Mhm.
So you can kind of guess that he must have some sort of arrangement with these crazy people here, and they let him be a merchant in the area. And then when he meets Ethan, it's fair to say that he can sell things to Ethan, and that's fine. That's what merchants do, and help him along as he would want to. He would want to keep his customer alive, and then as it becomes more clear that Ethan's going to come out on top in this fight, maybe that really persuades him to go more to his side and help him out further by transporting him, especially at the end there.
But then I wish that would have gotten more fleshed out. That these questions shouldn't be popping up in my mind if that's the case. Don't you think?
Really for all your stuff, in general, I'm gonna be pretty easy on Resident Evil as a whole, because like Justin said, there's always been that campiness, and you just have to suspend your reality.
No, and
Sometimes when
certainly I can understand that, and there's a lot of like suspension of disbelief that I have for a majority of the game, and you'll come to find that a lot of my gripes with the game kind of fall away when the story stops getting in the way.
Mhm.
So next one, when you first enter the castle, Dimitrescu, I thought that the metal gate comes down after you try and exit the castle, after Dimitrescu and her daughters appear, but it doesn't. I turned around immediately after entering the doors, and there was a metal grate just popping into existence. I wrote "ugh" after that note.
Okay.
I also said Jesus Juice regrows cells only when it doesn't. If Lady Dimitrescu has Ethan in her hands, why does she throw him through the floor when she can kill him right then and there? Also, Jesus Juice fixes sleeves as well as body cells.
Yes.
Yeah. Ethan?
Whenever I get a tear in my jacket, I just put some of that Capri Sun on there, and
Mm.
it's just right as rain.
Mm. I will say a nice touch. At the as you're taking the elevator up to Vientos, the lights cut out, and when the light pops back up on written on the wall of the elevator, it says "Come with me, Ethan." But after you finish the boss fight and you go back down the elevator, it's gone to signify that Ethan's no longer hallucinating and he's in the real world. I said that's a nice touch. I like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. During the fish part, where does the second cart come from? Why do you have to do a lap around the area for it to spawn in? What the fuck? Because you push 2 carts from the same spot to get across.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that part. You run
So
around really
yeah, so
quickly,
with Moreau, you go into his area. You're trying to get across to
yeah,
drain
you make
drain
a
the
bridge
water.
out of the crates. Yeah.
Yeah, you make a bridge out of the crates, but you push them both from the exact same spot.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, that did seem kind of weird to me. I guess when I got to that part, I thought that maybe I was just a little turned around and I was actually in a different spot. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're just 2 carts in the same spot.
yeah, they really make you feel like you turned around, but no, that's the exact same spot.
Okay.
And then I just wrote, why the fuck would Ethan sit down in front of an open hole like that? He's straight up retarded. Ethan regularly falls from ridiculously large heights and survives. Late in the game, he falls from really high up and lands in the water. Ethan's legs should have shattered once he hit the water. That's how water works. And then finally, my last gripe with this game, when Ethan has his heart ripped out, he falls back and onto his right side, but in the next scene, he is lying face down to hide his face because he's not allowed to have a face. Mm-hmm. So,
Well, yeah, the the and still stimulated after death. His body must have spasmed and he ended up face down.
but yeah, so those are all of my gripes with the game. So if you notice, most of my problems with the game is within the first hour of it. Otherwise, solid experience. Would recommend playing, but suspend your disbelief heavily if you're gonna play it. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And who knows, maybe they catch on to some of that stuff over the course of the year and even patch some of it.
So yeah, I think Russ wants to end things. We're creeping up to 4 hours anyway.
Yeah, this is the longest one yet.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, sorry. Was I snoring? No, I'm kidding.
Wow.
No, that's a fairly exhaustive list you got going there. I know a lot of those are like small little inconsistency type of things, but you know, if you're talking about mostly small inconsistency type of things that are going on in a game that are just a small little immersion breakers, that's not too bad if the game itself, the gameplay is fun and entertaining.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I agree, but those little things are important to me because I like to have a fully immersive world when I play a game.
Make sure you send an email to the development company outlining all your issues and ask them to promptly fix them and get back to you when they have a patch ready.
I'll just send
Let
them
us know
this
how it
4 hour.
goes.
I'll just send them this 4 hour live stream. I'll probably
Promptly write a letter to the editor to every major newspaper and pressure them to pressure the development company to fix said issues.
I'm sure I'm not the only person with those issues.
Oh,
Do
I'm
that
sure
with
you're not either.
Cyberpunk too, and get that game patched faster so I could play it again.
Yeah, man, I want my Delamain to drive itself. Thank you very much.
I just want my character not to clip through the universe.
That too.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Any closing thoughts before we end the stream?
I think it was a good talk.
Mm-hmm.
Glad we got to talk about Resident Evil. I know you had a lot to get off your chest there.
Yeah,
at the end,
thank
Joe.
you for giving me an opportunity to bitch.
No, I'm glad you had that opportunity. I'm glad it was kind of smaller things. I'm glad it wasn't super great game breaking things that were wrong at the core of the game. So I'm glad the three of us enjoyed playing it, and it's good that we got to talk more about games that we've been playing, want to play. I always like hearing that, and it helps you find certain things out about about people. So I'm glad we had that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The consensus, is it better than 6?
God fucking yes.
Well, there you go.
Cyberpunk's better than 6.
Ooh,
Oh,
boy.
I'd say that was a hot take, but I don't think so.
It sounds like it should be, but it's really not.
Well, I didn't play 6, and I never will with how shitty everybody says it is. So and I have played Cyberpunk, so maybe it is better than 6. It makes me look forward to future Resident Evil games, though.
Yes, that's important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely gonna need a better graphics card if they keep getting prettier.
I should. Do I even want to ask this question?
Hmm.
What
Shoot.
I mean, we've had 2 games now. What do you think of the first person? Do you think it's better than first person? Or do you think they should go back to third person?
To be honest, I don't mind the first person. I know there's a lot of people out there that really don't like it, and they would rather it be in third person. But I mean, if you really want to think about it, they control exactly the same way, the way that they kind of have it going right now, like with 2 and 3 remakes. The difference in controls is negligible, so it's just a matter of personal preference, I guess. But like, I couldn't be bothered either way. If they continued making first person games, cool. If they want the rest of them to be third person and just give Ethan's games like a special kind of like feel to them and just leave them in first person, I'll be happy with that too.
I would like them to go back to third person. But I don't mind the first person perspective as much as I thought I would. I snoozed on RE7 for years actually. I played it for the first time just last year, just last summer. So I was pleasantly surprised with 7. I thought it was despite the change in perspective and some of the glaring differences, I thought it was a return to form for Resident Evil. So I wouldn't be distraught if they stayed with first person, but I'd welcome the return to third.
Mm.
How about you, Justin?
I like the first person. I think it's maybe a little bit more scarier, maybe at times, because you
Definitely,
can't see it.
you see less. Your frame
Right,
of view
right.
is smaller.
But then like I told you guys a couple days ago, a week ago, like I picked up remake Resident Evil 2 remake, and that game is phenomenal. So I like
Mhm.
the third person too.
Yeah.
I mean, in a perfect world, maybe they could do both in like future games, and then you could do one or the other. It might be more work for them to like do some of the like I guess pre-rendered cutscenes. So they'd have to do a first person and a third person view
Yeah.
of that. But
I mean, but
Hey,
like
why not? It's like Skyrim and Fallout let you go switch between first and third.
yeah.
this is true.
And I mean, like I said earlier, functionally they play exactly the same too, so it
Right.
wouldn't be that much difficult. I mean, all they would really need to do is have a couple of I mean, I'm probably like oversimplifying it, but like have it be on like a switch where it's like you go from, over the shoulder to on the shoulders and then just hide the head, so that way it
Right.
doesn't clip through the camera. Or
Right.
if like they wanted to be really picky about it, they could make it so like it's a setting before you start playing the game, and then you can't change it while you have like the game open or something.
Right.
So
Yeah, I just realized what I said. I said like you can switch between the perspectives. Like I said, like Skyrim and Fallout. That shows you just how long that we've been waiting for Scrolls game. I referred to Elder Scrolls as just Skyrim.
You said that, and I was like, man, those games like third person for the fucking janky ass shit. I'm like, please God, don't make the future iteration of
yeah, man, I
Resident
can't.
Evil that janky.
No, I always play those first person. I never.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for the next Skyrim game.
Yeah,
What
it's
device will
coming
they
out
put
on your
Skyrim on next?
smartphone.
on
Oh,
your
God.
smart fridge.
We don't have the smartphone version yet.
Don't give Todd any more ideas.
Can I get my Super Nintendo version of it?
Yeah, just lower the resolution on PC. It's the same thing.
Okay. I can handle that.
All right, well,
Drive it to
gentlemen,
the Stone Age.
we are creeping ever so closer to 4 hours, so I think I'm going to call it here. I want to thank first our guest Justin for joining us today. He joined us halfway through the stream, or maybe not even halfway. He joined us like a third of the way through the stream now at this point. So thank you, Justin. Do you have any words to say before you head out?
Not much. Thank you for having me, though.
Of course, you're welcome
I
back.
enjoyed myself.
You're
Come back
welcome
anytime,
back
dude.
anytime. Yes, I'm sure Russ already talked over me, but yes, you're welcome back anytime.
I did.
It's all right. You send the invite, I'll pop on.
All right, fair enough.
Awesome. Let's plan
And
for it.
also would like to thank my two lovely co-hosts, Ace X-Wing 88, Russ, and Marcamune, Mark, for joining us for another episode of Dialogue Options. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you later.